Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Hidden Hockey Podcast. Again, my name is Matt Gordon. I'm going to go talk about the 2025 CHL import draft today. Now, as far as we're concerned, this is the live coverage we have today. Awesome to see 37 of you on here. That's terrific. If you guys have any questions on prospects, please leave them in the comments on the side or the live chat replay. If you're watching, I'm recording. Do yourself a favor and watch it. Or I'll leave a comment on the video below and I'll talk about whatever prospect, whatever decisions made by the teams today. I'll go ahead and I'll get into it and talk a lot about the value of some of these prospects. You're going to see a lot of different prospects drafted today from countries all across Europe and Asia. There's a ton of different really good draft eligible players for 2026, even some 2025 draft eligibles for the NHL draft that was just picked last week. And you might even get a few 2027 draft eligibles as well. I'm going to have a target list kind of different prospects that might be available, about a list of about 55 to 60 prospects that I think will be picked today or get in consideration, or some of them are just personal favorites of mine that I think deserve to go to the CHL. If you guys have any questions, of course, feel free to leave them on the chat on the side. Really excited to talk more about today's draft, and we're hopefully going to go and have a good, exciting time going through the picks for all 61 CHL teams. So for those who are unfamiliar with the new format changes in the CHL draft this year, the 2025 CHL import draft now is 3 rounds because CHL players are now able to carry 3 import players on their roster. So with that, that's really exciting. That's going to open up the first time where it's going to be 3 rounds. So 183 Europeans, Asians, and various other countries outside of North America will be selected in this draft today. I'm going to go ahead and share kind of my target list of players that I think will be available. Starting off in Russia, Ivan Ryabkin is likely going to be a top, one of the first round selections, no question. Just a matter of what team has negotiated with him correctly. There's some teams that have traded up, so maybe those are some of the ones that are on the short list for him. But he's a guy who, may not stay in the USHL. I think he's ready for CHL play. Should be a really impact player at the CHL level. Another guy who's a personal favorite of mine, but Mikhail Melikov. Played in the MHL this year, somebody who I think could be a real potential late round pick. And, some team may be very interested in him. And I think he's got a real pro side up, real pro upside, somebody with good speed, really good puck handling. This year really played well in the MHL, had about 30 points in 47 games this year. I think he's somebody who is tailor-made for the CHL and to get more visibility for himself. He was passed over in this past draft, but I think should he come to North America and play really well in the CHL, I think you're going to see him as a 3rd or 4th round candidate next year. Then, the bunch of Russians that played in the USHL, we'll start off with Alexei Vlasov. He's a guy who's come to North America and been, he's had a pretty good adjustment to North America. All of these guys are very similar in talent level. They're all guys who could potentially be top 60 picks in 2026. Just a matter of how their seasons pan out. But really high-end skill for Alexei Vlasov, and definitely somebody to watch out for, and somebody who I think will be selected today. Yegor Shilov is another guy. He's a little bit below Vlasov, in my opinion, but he'll be a guy who will be more than likely selected today. Another high-end skill, very good skater, good edge work, typical Russian player. Oleg Kulobyakin is another guy who I think could be selected as well. He's definitely somebody who, it put up a ton of points. And, in the USHL, he had his moments in the USHL. He didn't necessarily score a ton, but he was somebody who adjusted decently to the USHL. He likely will be a guy who will be selected today as well. Andrei Mogachev played for Little Caesars this year and had 153 points. Was clearly too good for the level he was at the 16U level. I would expect that he's going to be a guy that was looking to become a CHL player and probably stayed back to really make sure he was continuing to have the elite skill set that he does. Ilya Komakov was a teammate of Mogachev's for Little Caesars as well and had a ton of points. Those two just were a dynamic duo, had a lot of different skill sets and potential, just, an intriguing duo of players as well. Nikita Kleopov is somebody who had a really good USHL season, actually. Was one of the higher end players in this this pool of Russians here, the 08s that came to North America. Definitely somebody who I think could be a high-end pick in this draft. Definitely a first rounder in my eyes. Same with Ilya Morozov. Morozov just committed to the NCAA, but obviously due to the new rules of the NCAA and the CHL, the opportunity for CHL players to cross over the NCAA is a real thing. There won't be the NIL money or the national name, image, and likeness money that will be available to Russian athletes, except for when they file certain visas. But should be interesting to see if Morozov gets selected today. Moving on to the Czechs now, Adam Benach, recently selected in the 2025 NHL draft. He'll be somebody who I think will be selected today, and they'll want to have him in the CHL. Did really well at the USHL level, almost a point per game. Very skilled player, albeit 5'7". I think he'll adjust to the CHL very quickly and be an immediate impact player as soon as he's drafted. Highly expect him to be, a top 10, top 15 pick today. Simon Belahorsky is a 08 born. He's a late born 08 though, so he's one of the youngest people in this class of prospects to be 2027 NHL draft. Somebody who's got a lot of high-end skill, bigger frame guy. I think he's 6'3", and I want to say like 200 pounds, somewhere around that range, but a very, very big kid and very raw. I think there's still a lot of skill that needs to be unlocked with him, but somebody who will be probably highly valued. I could see, a really interested team getting him very early in this draft today. Same thing with Simon Katalicki. He played in Finland this year. I believe he played for Tappara. Did a really good job at the U20 level in Finland, and I think he's kind of grown past that level. I don't know that he'll get pro time, which is why I think he falls in that meaty middle of, being too good for Finnish juniors, but not good enough for the Finnish pro leagues. I could expect him to be selected as well today. Victor Samal is the guy I think could be a late round candidate. There might be a team that really is interested in him, and a good just all around player and somebody that I think is tailor made for the junior level. Some late buzz for some guys from Slovakia. Timothy Kazda is a guy who played in the USHL this past year. I thought he might stay in the USHL, but it seems like he's now very interested in coming to the CHL. I'm sure his agent has already worked out a deal, as most of these prospects have, with a certain team that's very interested in him, and he kind of could pick and choose his spot. So Timothy is a guy who, similar to Belahorsky, he's a guy who's a high-end 2027 draft pick, somebody who's definitely going to be in the first round of that year. A bigger frame kid at 6'4", his come to the USHL level, didn't necessarily blow the doors off, but internationally has done really well. I would expect him to be a guy who will be selected probably very early in this draft. Michael Kunderlich is another guy that was selected, or that could be selected today as well. He's a guy who, to me, is a very high-end player, very, really is a great player, but has extremely struggled at the pro level. I don't think he's getting the ice time that he should. I believe he's probably very frustrated with his role. He had 0 points in like 26 games in the Slovakian Pro League this year. I would expect him to be a guy who's selected as well. For some other guys that are available as well. For those on the feed, by the way, the draft itself doesn't start for another 22 minutes. So I'm just doing a preview of some prospects I think will be selected. And then the draft, I'll go right to the draft screen and we'll give you a live pick-by-pick analysis as it comes through. So 22 minutes before the draft starts, for those that need to know. David Balash is another guy as well. I think could be a really intriguing player, somebody who I have a lot of time for, and is somebody who in my viewings I've watched him, and I think he's a very talented and skilled player that may not be ready for the pro ranks. Another guy, Patrick Zubek, he's a Slovak, Polish dual national, but obviously chose to represent Slovakia. A really good skating defenseman, somebody with a decent, offensive game. Wasn't drafted in the NHL draft this past week, but somebody who I think is an intriguing player nonetheless. Should be interesting to see where he's able to go in this draft today. I think he'll be a guy who gets selected. For Sweden, you got Love Haramsham, a goalie who played for Skellefteå this year. Played at the under 20 level, and then also got some time in the Allsvenskan. One of the better goalies that are available today. I think he's somebody who will more than likely be selected, within the top 2 rounds. Depending on where goalies will go in this draft, I think he'll be the first or second one picked. Definitely somebody who, is one of the more talented players that are available in today's class. Gotten some pro games, was really highly touted as a 15, 16-year-old and struggled a little bit this year, but is still a very, very capable goalie and somebody who definitely has NHL upside. Melvin Novotny, I believe he's a late-born 07 as well. He will be probably a really good candidate that gets selected today as well. Haven't personally viewed him, but I know he's a very high-end player and somebody who I have a lot of time for. Arvid Drott as well, plays in a North American style game. He was selected in the NHL draft this past week, I believe in the 5th or 6th round. Definitely somebody who plays hard-nosed, very all-around game, very good all-around game, very defensively responsible. I think one of the better defensive forwards in this draft in terms of a guy you really want in your PK, and he's also kind of a pest. He finds his opportunities. He makes sure that he's out there, and he's very physically active. So I think him acclimating to a shorter ice rink in the North American game won't be that much of an issue. There's a 50-50 shot he'll probably be drafted. I think it's more of a matter of the CHL team thinking of selecting him. So, Austria here, we got Leon Kolarek, another high-end 2026 draft-eligible guy. I think he's somebody who is going to find himself very, very high in this draft. Maybe somebody like a Halifax may select him. I just have a feeling that, he's a guy who will want to come to North America, has already proven it at the pro level in Austria. Coming to North America should be somebody who acclimates fairly easily to the North American game. And I have a lot of time for Leon Kolarek. Konstantin Hutzinger, late-born 07. He'll be a guy who has a 50-50 shot probably being selected. He played at the U16 and U18 levels for Bishop Kearney Selects this year in the Northeast U.S. And, was a higher-end player, definitely had almost 100 points this year. Very good skater, good speed as well. Doesn't accelerate maybe the quickest out of the gates for a high-end skater like himself, but he should be a guy who I think should get some late-round interest today. For Belarus, I have Tim Tuzin, plays in Sweden this year. I believe he played for Timra. I think he's somebody who should be interesting to see what kind of players are available for him. What players are available for Belarus. I don't know how many of them will come over to North America. I know Flint in the past has drafted a lot of different Belarusians, including Dmitry Kuzmin, Vladislav Kolyachanok, and some other guys that are from that region of the world. They were very keen on those players. So I think that's a guy who Flint may be targeting. He says here Tim Tuzin is Swedish. Yeah, he is, but he's a Dolnat as well, from what I understand. Unless you know something I don't. But I've always understood him as a Dolnat. I'm going to go ahead and answer some comments here as well. The ones that aren't in English, I'm going to be honest, I can't answer them. I apologize. So if you could put your comments in English, that'd be greatly appreciated. And then Kieran says here, hello from Canada. I've been wondering what prospects teams are trading up for. So thanks for going live, mate. Absolutely. Appreciate you, man. Appreciate you being on here. If you guys are interested in the content I have today and you guys are interested in talking more about these prospects, I'm going to be doing a lot more content on the CHL import draft in the future, as well as the USHL, the OHL, QMJHL, and even the NHL draft as well. And, really appreciate you guys. If you guys are interested in prospects, please do yourself a favor and, follow my channel and subscribe on Twitter or X now, YouTube and Instagram. Thanks for that comment, Kieran. Appreciate you. Arkady says, did Shumalin go in the draft yet? The draft isn't for another 16 minutes, so we still got some time. I'm going to just go through some quick prospects. And then after the 16 minutes, I'm just going to go ahead and go into the actual draft and give you guys live pick-by-pick analysis. But that's going to be about 15 minutes before that case. So Now that I'm caught up in the comments, I'm going to jump back into some of the previews of these prospects as well. For Latvia, I think there's a lot of guys from Latvia that could get selected today. One in particular is a really big kid, and Robert Nadines played for Shattuck St. Mary at the prep level this year and was a very impactful player. I think he may play at the prep level again next year. I'm not exactly sure what his plan is, but I would assume that the CHL's calling. He was somebody who had nearly a point per game at the U.S. prep level, which is very impressive. For those who don't know what the prep level is in the U.S., it's like the high school level of hockey, but it's a very high-end high school level of hockey. And he's playing on one of the best prep teams in the United States. And was a very impactful player. Again, 6'6" and about 200 pounds at 16 years of age. I think CHL teams are going to want to be all over a guy like Robert Nadines. A shocking undrafted player from the 2025 draft was Bruno Osmanis. He was a guy who I thought for sure would be selected. I'm very surprised that he wasn't selected. And for me, I think he's a guy who's gotten some pro ability and some opportunities in the pro ranks. And for me, I don't know that he's adjusted as well as he probably could have, which is why he may not have been drafted. That being said, I think he does have a lot of skill. I think he's somebody who isn't the fleetest of foot, but offensively is very creative and gifted, in my opinion, and somebody who I think should definitely be selected today because I think he'd be tailor-made for the CHL. Daniel Serkins, another prospect I would expect to go today. He had a really good under-20s, was one of the better Latvian guys for the top division at the World Juniors this past year. I think he had 3 points in 5 games, if I remember correctly. I'm just going off memory here. But a guy who was a very responsible player. I think he impressed a lot of people with his 200-foot game. Didn't get drafted this year, which is a bummer. I think he's a guy who could be a real candidate as an overager next year, especially if they have a good World Juniors. And I would expect him to do really well at the CHL level. Andres Salikas played in Finland this past year, somebody who, is probably a later round selection today, but somebody who in the couple of viewings I've caught of him, I've really liked his overall game. Rinus Ozins is one of the defensemen in this draft that I think will be selected. I think he's another guy who played in Finland this past year. Has put up a lot of points throughout his time as a hockey player, and seems to be acclimating decently well. He would be more of a project pick. I think he'll be a guy who, if he came younger, might play for a CHL team for 3 or 4 years, might even play as an overager. But somebody who I think there's a good long-term play there with Rinus Ozins. Same thing here with Janis Leha. Janis Leha played at the Latvian pro level as well as the Latvian second level and was a guy who averaged a point per game at both levels. A very underseen prospect. I don't think a lot of people know about him, but he's somebody who, to me, I think the proper scout who does his research and does his analysis on things will really look at this kid and think he's a guy who should easily acclimate to the junior level. Oliver Zmernix is a guy who played at the USHL this year, was a really impactful player, one of the better players at the World Juniors for Latvia this year as well. Definite first-round quality for next year's draft. The best Latvian, I think, out of the group here in terms of where his talent is and where he fits. Just really like his overall game. I think he's got a lot of skill. Very responsible, good all-around game, and just a lot to like with him. And then finally, the last Latvian I'm going to talk about here is Rikards Rupkis. Again, another guy who played for Black Bear Academy this past year at the U16 level in the U.S. and was surprisingly not selected in the USHL draft. I thought for sure he'd be a guy who would get some looks, but maybe his agent told him, or his advisor told teams that he was strictly looking at the CHL level. Should be really interesting to see where he's able to go in this as well. For Norway, we got Michael Eriksson, was just recently selected in the 2025 draft. Played this year. I forgot what team he played for in Sweden, but he played at the under 20 level this year in Sweden and was a point per game guy. Definitely somebody who I have a lot of time for because I think he's got real NHL skill. Has also played a little bit of pro at the Norwegian level, but he was somebody who did struggle at that point in time. And that was a couple of years ago when he was, 15, 16 years old. He played some pro games. Definitely think he would be a high-end selection here and likely would be somebody who fits well in the OHL or the WHL. In that level, I think he's somebody who really fits in well. Ludwig Lofton is a guy who I thought might get selected this past year, was not selected, but I think is another guy who could get very well looked at. Utah picked him in the second or third round, I believe, in 2024. One of the few 2024 draft eligibles that's able to be selected today. But somebody who I think could use some North American seasoning. Got to play European pro games this year. Did a good job. I just think he's looked. I think it'd make a lot more sense for him to have an opportunity in the pro ranks as well. In the CHL ranks as well. William Hile Olsen and Tinas Luke Koblar are two guys who are also from Norway that I think could be interesting. Luke Koblar was selected by the Maple Leafs in this past week's draft. Both guys that are bigger framed guys. Luke Koblar probably has a little bit more upside than Hile Olsen does. But both guys who I think really could acclimate themselves at the junior level really well. For Finland, Eetu Orpana, Apo Vanainen, and Matthias Van Hanen were all guys eligible for the 25 draft this past week. Orpana was selected. Van Hanen was another shocking selection, a shocking undrafted player as well. I thought Van Hanen to me was my highest ranked player that was left on my board for my mock draft I had in my 2025 NHL draft this past week. I was shocked to not see him. I thought for sure he was like a third, fourth round candidate. Was the only player in Finland who had over a point per game at the Finland U20 level. I was very shocked to see that there wasn't thought to select him. Just was very shocking and surprising on that regard. Some other guys here that will be selected. I'm going to go ahead and just go back into the screen here. I'll talk more about these guys in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and answer some questions. And I'll maybe preview those guys when there's pauses in the time here. So another guy here. Hello, dude. I admire your content. Would love to be a friend and fan. If you're cool with it, feel free to add me on Discord. Awesome, man. Sounds good. Really appreciate you commenting on here. I'm wondering if you're the guy who always looks at my content and never comments. I hope that's you. If it is, let me know. I'm very curious. But I'm going to go ahead and put that note down. And really appreciate you guys. That are on here. So we'll go ahead here. Hello, Matt. Thanks for your stream. Can you explain for newcomers which leagues will have the most draftees? I mean, North American leagues. I thought people from the USHL go to NCAA and do not want CHL. Thank you for that. So that's a great question. Really, the explanation is this past year, in prior years, the NCAA and the CHL, their development routes were separate. They were not able to, once you committed to the CHL, you were not able to become an NCAA eligible player. But because of the NCAA recently ruling that, CHL players can now come to the NCAA, there's going to be a lot of overlap in the next few years of different guys from the CHL that once they either graduate out or when they have the opportunity, they're going to want to come to the CHL to kind of get their seasoning first, because in their mind, I think their perception is that the CHL as a developmental league is better than the USHL. The USHL used to be a feeder league for a lot of these guys because they would be able to play in a really high-end level but maintain their college eligibility. But now the CHL allows for that. So now it's a competition as to whether or not, what league is better for them, what situation is better for them. And there's a lot more choice for a lot of European prospects now. So I really appreciate that question. And I think for viewers, that's a very important distinction and something that is something to really talk about. So thank you for that question. Really appreciate that. And hopefully you're subscribed to the channel as well. Future Warlord says, let's go troops at 17 and 78. Yeah, I mean, let's see how the battalion do. I think there should be some interesting guys that are available to them this year. And I don't really know their trends necessarily. I think they've gone with a couple of Ukrainians in the past, so maybe there's the option there. But very curious to see what they're able to do this year. So really appreciate that. Kieran says here, if you were to guess who would go first to Kelowna, it's hard to say. This draft is so hard to really predict because a lot of guys that you think would go first round, their agents have negotiated a contract for them with a different team. So it's just a matter of playing the game, and a lot of these are already probably predetermined. They're just not known to the public. So there's really I think that's why a lot of pundits don't cover this draft as much as they normally would for the NHL and the other drafts, because there is things that are predetermined, but we just don't know. So it's interesting to see what will happen. I think it could be Ivan Ryabkin, I think, is a guy who's very high end. Maybe Kelowna wants a goalie. They might go Christian Kirsch is a guy who's an 06 born. I think one of those two might be the selection, but I honestly don't have a lean. I like to just watch this draft and let it see what happens. I don't know that there's – if you had me want to make a guess, I would assume it's either going to be Christian Kirsch or it's going to be Ivan Ryabkin. I think those two guys are two guys that are very high-end players that will be median impact guys that should make the NHL. I just have a feeling that those are the two guys that will they'll go probably even top 10, I would assume. So thank you for that, Kieran. Michael Rose says, how do you look up upcoming import players? So the beauty of it is Elite Prospects. I do a lot of research on there. I follow these guys all year as well, just because I'm really interested and I'm going to do more stuff on the channel about this, but just hockey in places where you don't really know there's prospects there or there's players there. So, I'm very keen on, the niche countries, on who got, those guys, where do they come from? Where's their development paths? The stuff that's not really covered in the modern draft coverage or covered in modern hockey coverage in general. So that's how I look them up. And then this class today, all the people that will be selected in this class in the draft today will be from the 2006 born year to the 2008 born year. And then next year, the 09s will be able to jump in and be drafted. But it'll be 2006 to 2008 borns will be selected in this draft as long as they're not from North America. That's basically the jurisdiction of guys who are eligible to be selected today. So thanks for the question, Mike. Again, if you guys have more questions through this, I might even stay on for a little bit after, just make sure all the questions are answered. But really excited to talk more. The draft is going to start in about 4 minutes here. There's no video feed or anything like that. So I can't really do anything. There's not really a video feed for me. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to have the CHL site open, and that will update, and I'll be able to really tell you guys more about it. And then I'll also look at Twitter as well to see what kind of action's going on there. And I keep saying Twitter, but it's X. But I'll be curious to see what picks are selected and what guys are available in today's draft. So so we'll see what happens here. I think there's, like I said, there's a ton of interesting guys as well. It looks like the Hitmen just traded up with the Swift Current Broncos. Swift Current's going to receive the 28th overall pick, and the Calgary Hitmen are going to see that they're going to have the 59th overall pick. So interesting trade. It's pretty much a swap for swap. Clearly, Swift Current's got a guy they're scared is going to be selected by somebody else, so hence why trades would even happen for the import draft. A lot of times, there's just a promise of, hey, don't select my guy. As long as we trade picks, I know your guy will be available, and I haven't heard anything from anybody in my league. And I think that's what happens a lot of the time with the draft selections. So, Kelowna. So the order of this draft too, Kelowna goes first, then Brantford, Victoriaville, Regina, Flint is 5th, St. John Sea Dogs. Kelowna again goes at 7, Ottawa, Halifax, Wenatchee, Sarnia, and then I'll put up the link to the rest of this here. Actually, I'll do that right now. So you can see the draft order as well. I'll be refreshing this to make sure everybody's aware and knows exactly what's going on in today's draft. It was interesting to see, it's interesting to see what players will be selected, as a lot of them go to trends. I think Flint's going to look to go to Ukraine or Belarus. Halifax always goes with like a Swiss kid, a German kid, or an Austrian kid. It just, certain teams have certain leans. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of guys will be selected in this year's draft. So I'll go ahead and answer some more questions here. I just want to make sure I get everybody's question answered. I'm sorry for those that are giving comments and not in English. I just feel bad that I can't really answer them, and I don't really have time to Google Translate and snap them back. So, it is what it is. But if you can leave any questions or any comments you leave, regardless whether it's live today or on recording, because this will be on recording as well, and it'll stay on the channel. Do so in English, because then I'll be able to answer those questions. Michael Rose says, do you think the CHL, the NCAA was the right move for the CHL leagues? I do. I think I think having the choice for a lot of these prospects, really everybody wins. I think there's just more opportunity for some of these European kids to really choose their own destination, and a lot of them are already doing that already. A lot of these Europeans are either going to Sweden or they're going to Finland. If they're not from those countries, going to the Swiss leagues. And then to have North America be an open space for them too, it just leaves a bevy of opportunity for all prospects, whether you're North American or not. It should be interesting to see what they're able to do. But I think the CHL kind of put their footprint in, and I think they almost had to do this because the USCHL was really gaining ground and really became a good development spot for a lot of these European players. So I think both leagues will eventually have their own standing, and I think in an ideal world they'll come together, and I'll answer that question in a little bit. But I think over time, I think there's a lot to like for the CHL to allow these NCAA guys to come into the game. So thanks for that, Michael. HA says, thank you for the stream. 6 Russian players from the best system. Antropov simply the best. Yeah, so I think there will be a lot of Russians selected today, though. Honestly, I had 9 on my list that I just went over a few minutes ago. So if you want to watch that back on recording, I got some. There's a ton of 08 borns that I think are really going to be impact players of the CHL that are going to be selected this year. And for those that don't understand what the CHL is, the CHL is the 3 major junior leagues in Canada. It's the Ontario Hockey League, the Western Hockey League, and the Quebec Maritimes Junior Hockey League. All 3 of those leagues form the Canadian Hockey League, which is the CHL. And then Isaac McDonald says, can you watch on live TV? There's no live feed, unfortunately, Isaac. So that I'm basically forming that as a guy who loves hockey. I just went and decided to make a stream today. So thanks for following along. If you guys like the content, please do yourself a favor. Please subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing a lot more in terms of draft coverage for all the junior drafts and European hockey, as well as international hockey and the NHL draft. Dunnett says, do you think the CHL will be forced to join, or do you think the USHL will be forced to join the CHL? There's a possibility. I know Muskegon and Youngstown have already looked to become members of the OHL. That was a rumor going around in like November, December. The likelihood of it happening, I think, depends on how solvent the USHL is financially. I think they're actually in a really healthy place, the USHL is. And I think the USHL is still a really quality league. It's a very underrated development option for European players. I think, you look at Andrei Svechnikov, had a really good development opportunity. Some of the Russians have really taken advantage of the USHL development system. I think there's a lot to like in both leagues. And I think ultimately, at the end of the day, whether they're independent or together, I think it's healthy that all these guys have the option to choose whatever league they want, because they're 16, 17, 18 years old. It's a really young person to be making a very important career decision, and having all options open to them, I think, is the best way for a lot of these prospects to develop. Isaac, I just said you can't watch the draft on live TV. This is it. What do you think about Adam Novotny? I think he's a guy who could definitely be selected today. High-end player, very good offensive skill. I think one of the better guys that'll be eligible for the Czechs in 2026. Personally, my thoughts on him are I think he could be a late first, early second. Right now, that's what I'm personally seeing. But, the potential is certainly there for him to be a mid, anywhere from, top 10 to 22, 23. I think he's in that frame should he have a really good pro season this year. And honestly, if he goes a point per game, at some point in time, I think he'll be a guy who could get looked at as well. I'm going to stop the questions here because a few of these guys are being selected. Kelowna gets Thomas Politin, a Czech player from the Lahti Pelicans at the U20 level. A very high-end skill player, somebody who I think is an intriguing player as well. Really skilled, good potential. he'll be a guy who is more than likely, obviously, these guys who are picked earlier are going to come to North America. So I think he'll be a very good top 6 player for Kelowna. Should be an 80 to 90 point player at the CHL level. Adam Banach here at 2 for Brantford. Another high-end player. I had him as a guy who could be selected. I really like his game as well. Definitely somebody who was, he's a higher-end player, somebody who played really well at the in the USHL this past year. A little bit shorter here, as you can see, at 5'7", 160 pounds, but a lot to like with him. Definitely somebody who is going to have a lot of time in Brantford and probably be one of their more impactful players. Jacob, thanks for the question. And if you like the content, please subscribe. I'll get back to the comments in a minute after I'm done recapping the rest of the players that are selected here. Igor Shilov, another guy who I just mentioned a few minutes ago, played for the Long Island Gulls at the U16 level in North America this past year. They're based out of New York. He was a guy who also has some USHL ties as well. Obviously, the Q really liked him, and Victoriaville is taking a chance here and getting him selected. I think there's a lot to like with Igor Shilov. I think he's a very high-end player and somebody who I think will be a really impactful player in the CHL level. I would expect, 70 to 80 point upside with him as well. Michael Prado, another goalie who's just selected by Detroit in the 2025 NHL draft this past week. He was a 3rd round goaltender, one of the higher end goaltenders that was eligible for today's draft. Michael will go to the Regina Pats there, who should have a pretty decent team. He'll likely be the starter there in Regina, and I think we'll get a lot of playing time there. And bigger goalie at 6'4", somebody with a lot of good overall ability. Slovakian-born guy. Have a ton of time for him. I think he's going to be a really impactful player. 5 here, Flint gets Darrell's Oljanskis. Played for AIK. I got a viewing of him, I think, like 2 years ago. Really good skater, somebody who's got a great breakout pass. I look at him similarly. Flint took Kolyachanok a couple years ago, and he played for Flint for a couple years. I think he's that kind of player, somebody who has a ton of skill, really impactful as well. Oliver's Mernique. Sorry, I'm going to keep this up here for those that are following along here. Oliver's Merniques. He's a guy who, another high-end player, played really well at the USHL this past year. Also mentioned him earlier as well. He'll be a guy who I think is a really skilled and very interesting player and should do really well in the QMJHL. I would expect him to probably be a 50, 60, maybe 70 point guy in his like D2 year or 2 years after he gets drafted. But a lot to like there with Oliver's Merniques. Daniel Picard at 7, another Czech player that was selected today. I don't have a book on him, unfortunately. I haven't really watched a ton of him play, but obviously Kelowna has a real value on him as well. Same with Andre Rummel here. Played at the junior B level for the Czechs, is really the under 18 level. I don't have a viewing on him, unfortunately, but he's a guy who obviously they highly valued. Halifax here takes a Russian, believe it or not, Oleg Kulubyakin. I just talked about him a few minutes ago as well. He had some USHL time this past year and was, somebody who I think played better at the U18 and U16 level in North America. But he'll be a guy who I think should fit in really well with Halifax's, high-end offense. Great skater, very high-end offensive game. A lot to like with a guy like Oleg Kulubyakin. Sorry, that's a hard name to pronounce apparently. But really high in skill, somebody who I think has a ton of potential. Just a lot to like with him. I think there's a really high-end offensive hockey player there. I'm going to go ahead and bounce back to the comments, and then I'll talk more about the rest of the picks here as they come flying through. So Isaac says, thanks for that. Yeah, no problem, Isaac. Michael Rose, USA Hockey said they will not allow any USHL teams to jump to CHL. Yeah, I think they're going to fight their best to keep themselves independent, because what's in the USHL is the U.S. National Development Program, and they put a ton of money into that program, and they need players and teams to play against. So Yeah, they're going to fight it. That's pretty obvious, I think. Isaac McDonald, when are the Moncton Wildcats selecting? The Moncton Wildcats are selecting. Let me look real quick. I think they're late. 54. So they're 54, and then they got a second and third too as well. And then let's see here. Canada needs us. Tyler C says Canada needs the U.S. to grow the sport of hockey. Having a league specifically in America would help that a lot. Even if not, do you think most USHL teams could join the CHL in either league? I talked about this a little bit earlier. The U.S. is growing quite a bit. I'm an American guy myself. I live in Michigan. It's definitely growing all across the country. I think AAA teams are forming every day. There's different players that are available. I think really what it comes down to is the mainstream interest in junior hockey in the U.S. That's the real barrier. And the USHL is only in like 4 or 5 states in the U.S. So there needs to be more expansion, more opportunities. Even the North American Hockey League as well, which is the feeder league under the USHL, has a lot of different guys, that are in different areas of the U.S. And it's a slow burn, but I think over time it'll happen. Tyler, really appreciate the question. Oberhauser says, what do you think of Leon Kolarek? I love the kid. I think he's one of the better players eligible in today's draft. Definitely a top 10 pick, I think, or a top even 20 pick in 26. Really high-end player. Never had a bad viewing of him. I watched 3 or 4 games of his. I just love what he brings to the table. I think he's a very, very skilled hockey player and absolutely has an NHL, absolutely has a ton of NHL potential, no question. Jacob Sturm says, Navani plays for my team. I personally hope he stays in the Czech League for a year before the draft. Yeah, I would assume selfishly you'd want that, right? I think he's a very skilled player and you would love him. I think that's, very easy to think that, so that's funny that you say that. So, I would think it would make a lot of sense for him to develop in the Czech League as well. Michael says, crazy, I'm from Flint. Hey, good looks, man. Fellow Michigander, let's go. Southeast Michigan kid too, so that's pretty wild. That's really funny. So thanks for the comments, guys. Continue to comment. Even if I don't answer them immediately, I'll go ahead and answer them before the end of the stream today. So feel free to leave any comment you want on there. I'm going to go ahead and scroll down here, guys, just because I'll recap back in a minute, but I want to get to more of these guys here. Wenatchee here selects Tomas Turznik, another guy who I think he's Slovakian, if I remember correctly. Bigger kid at 6'4". Some people really had him as a potential sleeper and a selection in the 25 draft as well. I don't believe he was picked, so I'm not surprised he would go here and be selected pretty early. Wenatchee, obviously, it's an expansion team in the CHL, so he'll get the opportunity to be a very impactful player very early. And lots of in terms of that selection for them. Kavalichki goes for Sarnia here at the 11th pick. Sorry, I'll scroll up a little bit. Kavalichki here, another high-end player. This is a kid who should be a very high-end eligible for 2027, or sorry, 26. Very high-end player. This is one of the better players that were eligible today. Thought he would go early. Not surprised that he's going early. Sarnia is going to love this kid. They're going to probably look to have him have a similar impact to what Pavel Zacha had for Sarnia. I would expect him to be in his prime for Sarnia, an 80, 90-point kid, maybe even 100 points in a really good year. Nice selection there by Sarnia. Alexei Vlasov, another kid, Victoriaville as well. Another guy who I thought will be selected. So Igor Shilov and Vlasov, they put the two Russians together. Both of them have a lot of chemistry and have played a lot together, so it's no surprise that Victoriaville would want to combine those two together. They're very much going to be guys you put on a line together and just watch them go. Them together, I think, is better than them apart, so they're going to be very high-end players at the CHL level. I think they're likely going to be they're probably the duo to watch, actually, for Victoriaville, even from day one of them being in camp. I think they're that impactful. Let's see here. Ivans Kufterins, another goalie for Kamloops. Like his game too. I don't have a big book on him, so I can't really talk about him much, but I know of the player and he makes sense for the CHL. Matus Kukarchik. Sorry, I'm butchering these names. I feel bad if I am. Bigger player here. He showed up at the combine and was instantly 2 inches bigger and 20 pounds heavier, which I think shocked a lot of scouts and led to him getting drafted. He'll be a guy who you let him linger, and he's kind of like a well-cooked steak, right? You let him linger, you let him get to where he needs to be. And, I think he'll be a really intriguing player to see as well. There's a ton of Czech kids getting selected, and we'll get to those comments in a minute. But, he's a guy who I think Owen Sound will love this kid. I think he's a very hardworking player as well. Fits that, that structure and that culture that they have in Owen Sound. Very impactful, and I think he'll really like his opportunity there. 15, Quebec takes Nikita Ovcharov for the Red Army team. So, Ovcharov is a really intriguing player as well. I think, I'm not surprised he was selected either. I didn't have him on my watch list, but he's a guy who I thought was very likely to be selected. So no surprise there in terms of why he would be selected. It makes a lot of sense. Darren Rolsing, a big German defenseman, played in Finland this past year, 6'6", 185 pounds, almost played in the USA, almost played in the U18s. He made the roster and then was cut late. Very good skating defenseman, needs a lot of time still for his development, but a good pick here. I think he'll be a guy who plays in Wenatchee for a few years. So I'll bounce back here to the comments now. Thank you guys for your patience as well with the comments. Sorry, I'm bouncing back and forth, so I'm trying to cover as much as I can. As I was just saying, Czech players are so underrated. There is a lot of really underrated Czech players. I think the development system in the Czech, in Czechia, I think has gotten a lot better. There used to be a lot of politics and different things like that, but I think they've really removed those. And a lot of these guys, even if they haven't stayed in the Czech development system, they've gone in other places and developed really well. So obviously their youth development is doing something right. And I think a player to watch in a couple years from now, I think he's probably one of the best Czech prospects I've ever seen, is Dominik Zelezny. Watch out for that name. That kid's a superstar. Do you know something about Adam Cerny, also from Hradec Králové? Does he have a chance to be drafted? I don't have a ton on him. I know of the name. I'm not going to speak on him though without I haven't watched him play or anything like that, but I know of the name. Yeah, there's a chance. I mean, I won't say there isn't a chance with him. I think he's like you said, he's a little bit smaller. But I think there's a real possibility that he could get selected. To what team, I'm not sure, but I think he definitely could be selected. Sorry, Stepan. My bad. Because there is an Adam Cerny. I just forgot about him. Stepan Cerny. I know a little bit about him, but not a ton. So you guys corrected the name. Thank you for that. How much rounds does the CHL draft? It's 3 rounds, 183 picks. So, and then Jake Moore says here, wow, excellent pick there by Chicoutimi. Let me look at what they did here. So Chicoutimi takes Maxim Schaefer. He was a guy who was a very decent player at the U20 level in the U20 level in Germany. Somebody who probably was likely to be playing in German pro hockey, but hasn't really. I don't think he would be able to play there next year in terms of his readiness. I think he still needed some time, but I like that pick for Chicoutimi, no question. The guy selected before him, though, I didn't cover, was Evgeny Dubrovtsev. He played for the Krasnogorsk group in the MHL. Don't have a book on him, so I don't really know much about him. Haven't really watched him, so I apologize for that. And then Matej Mikes, I don't really have a book on him either. Don't know much about him. I haven't seen him play, so I feel bad in saying that I don't know them, but I don't know them. I'm not going to talk about them if I don't know them. So sorry. Let me go back here. I'll recap all this later on too. So if you guys miss picks, feel free to let me know, and I'll jump back and forth if I need to. Do you think Dominik Zelezny might be a first overall pick in the NHL draft? Is it possible? I think so. I think he's definitely somebody who could be a very impactful player very early. I mean, I think he had like 300 points or something like that in his like his 13-year-old year or something crazy like that. He's already playing at the U17 level in the Czech Republic. I think he, as you probably know, I think I give him 18 months and he's probably getting some U20 games. But every clip and viewing I've seen of this kid, I think he's one of the most skilled kids I've ever seen coming out of the Czech Republic. Probably one of the most skilled kids I've watched in a very long time. I think there's a ton of ability with him. I've talked about it on this channel actually a few times. And yeah, I think the world of him. I think he's a very skilled hockey player. He's clearly dominated at every level. I don't think too many guys have scored at the junior level and at these youth tournaments at a level like he has and as consistently as he has. Bedard used to do a lot of that, where he would put up 150, 200 points in a season and, put up a ton of points that'd be really above the people in his age group. But Zalesny has been phenomenal when it comes to what he's been able to do and the pedigree he's already established. And he's still not eligible for this draft until 2027. He's still got 2 years before he's eligible in this draft. We're already talking about it. So clearly he's a guy who should be very high end. And, should his development path continue and he keeps his mindset going and the right things happen, he absolutely could be a number 1 overall pick. So thanks for that question there. I'm going to jump back now into the draft results here. It looks like things have slowed down. Let me refresh real quick. Just make sure I didn't miss anything. Yeah, nothing missed so far. So all caught up here. I don't know if they're taking a pause here to look. And, I think they have the ability to take timeouts in this draft. So maybe they thought a guy would be available that's not now. I can't believe we're already up to 120 people. For those on here, really appreciate you guys being on here. And now we're down to 113 as soon as I say that. But, if you guys really like the content, please do yourself a favor. Please subscribe. I really would love to communicate with a lot of you guys. I'm doing draft coverage constantly for the NHL draft. I'm doing stuff. I'll be doing more international content as well for the international tournaments coming up in December and November and the U18s and the U20s, and covering those things and giving my thoughts too on any European games I watch or any North American junior hockey games I watch. So if you're from Europe and you don't get the access that you would like, do yourself a favor. Please subscribe to the channel. I'd love to talk to you guys. Love to get your insight and your input. And even if you're watching things and you want to tell me about them, feel free to do so. I've talked a lot of times and, about some various other players as well. And, I would love to talk to any of you guys on here about hockey, whether it's, very instrumental or little, things on that or, some other things. So anything you guys want to talk about, feel free to leave them on the chat here or just message me or comment on any of the videos. I really appreciate it. Hopefully you guys look through my catalog of videos as well after this and decide to subscribe. And if you do, I'll be pumping more content. So greatly appreciate you guys being on here. Risky for the Biscuit says, what were your thoughts on the the U16 OHL draft? I actually have a whole video on it. So if you go on my channel, I had a live stream. It's like a 4-hour live stream I did during the draft where I actually have the live feed on there. So yeah, do yourself a favor, watch that, risk it for the biscuit, leave your comments below on there and we can talk more about it. But yeah, I have it. It's a different video. It's literally called 2025 OHL draft live stream. Go on there and I got all my thoughts for all the picks on there. I went pretty much pick by pick for at least the first couple rounds. And then I talk a little bit more about some other guys later on. So really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Thank you for that. Jake Moore. So probably needed a timeout to spell that guy's name. Yeah, maybe. But I actually have this guy on my watch list. So that's awesome. Doman Krzysztof Svangov. He played in Finland this year. Actually has been named to the Cuckoo Pro team, which is in the Liga in Finland. So the highest level in Finland. He was named to their roster early. This kid's got a lot of different experiences. He's played already at the World Juniors at the 1A level. He's played U18s at the 1A level as well. He's actually even played in Olympic Games qualifying because they thought he was good enough to make their roster. He's a very impressive player from Hungary. I think he's going to be one of the better players that's ever been eligible for this draft from Hungary. If they get him to the Sioux, I think he will be a top 6 guy for them, no question. but there's a ton to like with him. I think he's a very unknown prospect in the prospect world. But I think you're going to see him put into some mock drafts in 2026. I give him 3 or 4 months in the CHL, and I think you're going to see him in the people's top 60s. I really do. So yeah. Charlottetown takes Ivan Ryabkin, QMJHL. He goes here 5'11", 210. That's a little bit more than most people have ranked him at before. So, or more than he's publicly had his weight listed at before. There is some issues with work ethic and overall work ethic with him. He did struggle to score in Russia this year. Ryabkin did. But the junior level is right where he needs to be. I think this was a common sense thing. Definitely needed to be a first round pick in this week's draft or in this draft today. Not surprised at all that he was selected, and I think he goes to the Q and does a good job. I think he'll be somebody who will ultimately really like his development in those times there in the Charlottetown Islanders team. So I think he'll do well in Charlottetown. Seattle takes Marek Sklenicka. There we go, Sklenicka. Played the U18 level, obviously. Sorry I butchered his name. Hopefully he's not on here. I know of him. I know he did really well at the U18 level, was one of the better goalies at the U18 level. He'll be a guy who probably plays some U20 time next year. He might come to North America. I'm not 100% sure. If he does, Seattle's getting a guy who probably is not the starter this year, but probably next year. That's my overall thoughts on Mr. Skalechnia. I probably still said it wrong. The Flint Firebirds, like I said earlier, they like their Belarusians. They went ahead and took Evgeny Prokhorov, goaltender for Shinnik Bobruisk, one of the Dynamo teams in Belarus. I've heard of this kid. I haven't watched him personally, but clearly they like him. And obviously there's I think he's played in the second tier pro ranks as well as the MHL. So he'll be clearly ready for the CHL. And I don't know if he starts this year, but he probably will be somebody who gets some looks in the coming year in a backup spot, no question. Marek Donachik, Czech player from Sparta Praha. He's well known. He has a viral goal, if you look up his name, where he literally carried the puck on his stick and bounced it up and scored a goal through the neutral zone. So very high-end skill player, somebody who's got a great stick handling ability. A lot to like with him and his overall game in terms of fitting for the junior level. He's willing to take risks and willing to show his creativity out on the ice, which is great for the junior level, and obviously will make him a very exciting player. I think that's a really savvy pick there for Newfoundland for another expansion team that is coming to the QMJHL. A lot to like with him. I think he'll be a guy who is very impactful and probably a fan favorite in Newfoundland. Jakub Vanasek, I don't have a book on him. Obviously, Tri-City selects him. Obviously, they clearly like them in some way, shape, or form. So it'll be interesting to see what comes from him. Same with Ben Reisnecker here. I don't have a big book on him either. Sherbrooke here at 27 takes Ilya Kolmakov. And Mogochov goes right after him. I just talked about them earlier too. Both guys, I think, had over 140 points this year for Little Caesars at the U16 level, which is one of the higher end youth programs in Michigan, based out of Little Caesars Arena in Detroit. They have their own practice facility. Both guys are eligible for the USHL as well, but they go to Sherbrooke on the Q and Calgary in the Western Hockey League, respectively. Both high-end offensive flair guys, both great hockey players, very high-end skill. Lots of like with their overall games. I think there's a ton of potential with both guys to do really well in their respective leagues. Sergei Gonchar's kid goes next with Sudbury. I don't know if he'll go to Sudbury. Sudbury has some history. They've had some issues ownership-wise in the past, decade or so. More than likely, I would expect him to go to the USHL, but maybe they'll shock me and they'll have him go to Sudbury and play in that development system there in Sudbury. I don't know. I think he's the first pick, honestly, that's selected. I don't know he'll actually go there. Surprising, but he's got the bloodlines. Sergei Gonchar, I believe, is his uncle. I don't believe it's his dad. Correct me if I'm wrong. But he's a guy who also was selected in the National Hockey League draft this past week. It should be interesting to see what he's able to do should he come over to North America. Maxim Soyeve plays for Genevieve Servette at the U17 elite level. Probably played some U20 games this year as well. I don't know much about him in terms of I don't get a lot of viewings on the Swiss guys, so a lot of mine is just stat following for the Swiss guys. They just don't have a lot of streams available most of the time. And he hasn't played internationally, so that's just overall what I have on him. Matthias Van Hanen goes to Everett. One of my favorite guys who was not selected in the USHL draft. I'm very shocked, or I'm sorry, in the NHL draft. I was shocked he wasn't selected. Very high-end skill guy. Would have gotten some pro time this year, but if he goes to Everett, to be able to play with a guy like Landon Dupont and Carter Bear, I mean, that's a hell of a team to have. And he'll be a guy who I think is he's got a very likely chance to be selected as an overager. And should he adjust to the Western Hockey League really well, I think he'll be a guy who gets selected. And probably one of the top overagers that'll be eligible next year. Alex Misiak, playing for Waterloo this year. He's gotten some pro time as well. Erie selects him here. Another high-end Slovakian kid, somebody who I'm not surprised that he was selected. And, I think he'll fit well in Erie. They really like their Slovakians there. They've had some other Europeans that have done really well in Erie as well. And, fun to see here. It'll be fun to see what happens and what kind of players come out of the draft today. Arseny Radkov, not had a viewing on him, but he was also a very highly thought of guy coming out of Belarus. Another good goaltender. Played in the NHL this past year for the Tumen Legion. I don't know their name in English. I just know they're Tumensky. Haven't really gotten a viewing of him, unfortunately, so I don't have much on him, but should be interesting to say nonetheless. So other than that, other questions or anything, you guys can feel free to leave them in the chat here. I'm going to go ahead and update my target list here on the side as you guys throw the comments in. Obviously, there's still some guys here left to be selected. Most of the Russian guys I had on my watch list actually already selected, which is great. Not surprised at all for that. Sorry, let me go ahead and look real quick. Okay, let's see. Like I said, if you guys are new to the channel, do yourself a favor, please subscribe to the channel. I'll be doing a lot more streams like this. I'm talking more about some of these really high-end players, and I think you guys will really enjoy the content, and I think you guys will really like the content that's going to be coming out in the next 6 to 8 months. So I'll be pushing out more during the summer as well. And, if you guys feel free to leave any suggestions for content too, I would really appreciate that. And would love for you guys to be able to really engage and be able to enjoy what's being put on my streams during this. So really appreciate you guys being on here. Eric Nielsen goes now for Portland. Another guy, very good all-around player. Doesn't have a lot of high-end offense, but he's a great skater. His dad was an NHL player at one point in time, played for the Florida Panthers for about 600 games. Coming to North America would not be a surprise to me at all for him. I think he'll love it there in Portland, and Portland's had a really good development history with getting guys to the National Hockey League. So no surprise there in terms of, him being selected. I think he's a very Portland Winterhawk player, 200-foot guy. doesn't necessarily have the most offense, but he'll make sure that nobody scores on you. And one of the better defensive forwards, I think, that are eligible and available in today's draft. And it's good to see that. I think it's really awesome that there's been that opportunity to the opportunity for him to come to North America and really develop. He's another guy, though. He's got two really good development situations. He's got a good thing going with Örebro, is one of the emerging programs in Sweden. And then he's got Portland, which is a really good development system as well. Either way, he's going to be in a very, very good spot for himself developmentally, and he's kind of hit the lottery in terms of both development systems are really great options for him. It's just a matter of where he prefers to be. Saginaw up next. They're probably taking a break here, but one of the Russian kids will probably get selected here, I'm guessing. There might be, Ilya Morozov might be a kid that gets selected. They could also look at, Nikita Kleopov. Should be, or maybe they go crazy off the board here. Maybe they go, with some of the Norwegian kids that are selected. There's a lot to consider with this selections today. So yeah, I'm actually all updated with the comments, guys. So feel free to leave more if you guys want. Glack said the URL. It's CHL. I'm gonna actually put it in the comments here so you guys have it. CHL.ca/import. So that's on both feeds for you guys to see. And then Jakob says, can you explain to me how these drafts work? Because Adam Novotny should have agreed with the Pete's, but why didn't another team that had the draft pick before him take him? You're only allowed to be selected once. So that's probably why. I forgot he was selected by the Pete's, actually. So he likely would his CHL rights are with the Peterborough Pete's. Obviously last year, Peterborough was one of the last place teams in the OHL, and they do have a young group next year that will make them better. I think they'll be a lot better than they were this year. I think they only had 18 wins in about 68 games this year. So likely, I know you wanted him to stay in the Czech league. I think there's there's a real chance he stays actually in the Czech league, honestly. Just because I think he would develop better there. But Peterborough also has a really good development system. So it's just a matter of, where he finds his best options are. And, it just depends really, right? So I think that's what it comes down to. But yeah, a lot of these guys, the drafts work this way. The best players aren't picked in the first round usually all the time. So agents have predetermined selections with teams, and they'll go to, they'll say, hey, this kid wants to come to the CHL. I know you and me have had players go to your team before and they really like your development system. Are you interested in this guy? And the teams have kind of a predetermined agreement even before the draft saying, hey, yes, I would like this kid selected. I do want him to be a part of our program. And they kind of work out an informal thing and say, hey, we'll take you in the import draft. And then at that point, they make their selections in the import draft. Any kids that don't get selected out of the import draft within the age groups are more than able to come over and come at any time. But they also have the option to be selected next year if they're 2007 or 2008 born, if they haven't already been selected. But basically, you're claiming their rights, and once your rights are claimed, that is it. You can't be reacquired. You can only be traded your rights to a different team. And that happens on occasion. It's happened a lot more recently. But once you're selected in the CHL import draft, you can't be selected again. It's just at that point, it's just asking to have your rights traded. So thanks for the question, Jacob. And if you have any other questions, feel free to leave them on the side. Really appreciate you engaging and putting in more in the comments. Guillaume Racine says, who do you think will win the Memorial Cup next year? I mean, that's a good question. I think everybody is waited with bated breath to see where Gavin McKenna is going to go. McKenna right now obviously is considering the NCAA. It sounds like he's leaving Medicine Hat. That would have been probably, if they have him, he's the guy who's clearly would have been the best CHL player next year. So I think that's why he's looking to leave. It's hard to say, I guess. I think Moncton's got a real good shot next year should Denoyer come back. I think London is always going to be a team that has their horses in the fire there. I think they're a real favorite. Everett, I think, has got a really good team too. They should be pretty loaded. So if I were to go from all three leagues, I would say Moncton out of the Q, Everett out of the Western Hockey League, London coming out of the OHL, and then I would think the winner of those three would probably be Moncton is my guess. So I think Moncton would be the team to win out of the Memorial Cup this next year. Thanks for that, Guillaume. Go ahead here now. Saginaw took the Russian. They took Nikita Kleopov. Kid who is U.S. and Russian dual net. Really high-end player. Played really well at the USHL level this year too. Not surprised that this kid was selected. I thought Saginaw would take a chance at him. And actually, I think I even said his name. So that's a really good pick for them. Really like that for the Saginaw Spirit. And I think he would probably come over, no questions asked, to Saginaw because he wouldn't have to be an import. He might not even have to be counted as an import. I'll be curious to see what they roll on him. Jacopo De Luca, an Italian-born kid. Doesn't really happen very often that an Italian-born kid selected, but he played for Embry Piotta at the U20 level this past year. Very high-end player as well. One of the better Italian kids or Italian prospects in general. Him and Damian Clara are two guys that are perceived to be the best Italian kids that are in the world in terms of guys that are under 20 players. So Jacopo coming to the CHL. Baie-Comeau, if he comes to Baie-Comeau tends to not have guys report for some reason. Nathan McKinnon was famously drafted by Baie-Comeau and then had to be traded to Halifax. But they did select him. So he should be a guy who's very impactful at the CHL level and a lot to like with Mr. DeLuca. David Kirkall goes next for Tri-City, another Czech kid selected. I think there's already been like 15 or 16 Czech kids selected today. I'll get into that afterwards, but just really intriguing player as well. Somebody who I really think will do well in Tri-City. Not the most offensively gifted guy in the world, but very defensively responsible player, a bigger frame kid at 6'3", 210. Should have a pretty good level for the junior ranks, and I think he'll really like the Western Hockey League because his play style fits well there. Matej Stankoven, another Slovak selected for Brampton. Don't have a book on him, unfortunately. The next guy selected here, Gus Vanderkai. I do have a book on him. He's a guy who he's from the Netherlands. I have heard about this kid before. He's come and played in the Swiss League for a little bit. I haven't caught games of him, but I followed kind of his story over the last few years. I think in Rwanda, they will like him a lot. It's interesting that they have his address listed as Blaricum, Nebraska, but he's definitely not Nebraska, the Netherlands, duh. So he's listed from the Netherlands. He's somebody who is an interesting player and should be interesting to see what he's able to do. Aaliyah Carter from the U.S. All right, so next pick here, we got Saskatoon here takes Dustin Wilhoft. Yes, the height and weight is real on that kid. He is 5'6" and 130 pounds. Just a boodle of skill, though. One of the best players that I've ever seen from Germany. Just really high-end skill, very good potential. A lot to like with his game and what he's able to do. And, I have a ton of time for the high-end skill that he has here as well. Just a lot to like with Mr. Wilhoft here. I think he's a very skilled, very talented player. Needs to bulk up, obviously. But I think he's clearly ready for the junior level in terms of his skill, his skating. He will be an impact player for Saskatoon. You got to put him probably with some bigger frame guys, make sure he's protected, but the skill is undeniable and should be a really interesting player for the Saskatoon Blades here. Don't have Oni Kalto is the next pick here. Don't have a real book on him. Haven't caught a glimpse of him, so I won't speak on him. Anton Lind goes to Chicoutimi. He's a Danish kid. He was really highly thought of a long time ago. I'm very. I think he's had a real downturn in his career. I think he's tried to play in Denmark. Has not really done really well. He's played in Sweden before, kind of did okay in Sweden. This is kind of his last shot, I think, to find himself developmentally. So should he come to the Q and do really well, I think it should be an interesting, it should be interesting to see, what we're able to do here. And, with him, I think there's a lot to like with Anton Lind. I think there's a really good hockey player in Anton. It's just a matter of, can he find it at the junior level? Is he able to, to do well at the junior level? I think there's some warts he's got to get through. I think he's running kind of out of time. He's an 06 born player. So for him, being able to find those development opportunities is key. And this is his last shot to find himself developmentally and get to the upside he had a long time ago. Christian Kirsch goes for Kitchener at 44. I fully expect Christian Kirsch to come to Kitchener and play there. I think, they lose Jackson Parsons, in steps in Christian Kirsch. I think he'll be a guy who is an immediate starter for them. One of the better selections, I think, in this draft in terms of where I think he should fit. Samu Alulori, I don't have a book on him. I haven't watched him play before, unfortunately, so I can't really talk on him. Elias Schneider goes for Shawinigan at 45. I think he's a guy who I'm not surprised was selected either. Fits really well for the QMJHL. Good all-around player, almost more of a checking guy than a scorer. But good speed, really hard work ethic, really good in the corners, manages his ice time really well as manages his effort level. I think he's somebody who he'll give you his effort all the time, and is somebody who should give you a lot of time out there, and somebody who's really impressive as well. Sorry, let me just roll through these here. And I'll get to your comment in a minute. Orsolak goes here for the Prince Albert Raiders. Big goalie, 6'4", 225 pounds. Just a massive human being. He's a 2026 draft eligible guy. Should be fun to see what he's able to do for Prince Albert, but a really impactful junior goalie in the Czech League. And, I think he's going to really take this opportunity to develop and find his game. And he should be a really intriguing player nonetheless. And then Andre Gudin goes for Barrie here. He just was selected. Another Russian kid, 08-born player. I've never seen him listed at 5'5" and 137 pounds. I think he's a little bigger than that, actually. But, it should be intriguing to see what he's able to do and the kind of player he will become. And, I have a lot of time for Andre in terms of his skill. I've only caught one game of his. I just happened to be watching on Flow Hockey one time, and what I saw was really impressive. Really good edge work, a very skilled hockey player. Really good shot for his size too. I think he's probably more 5'7", 150. Honestly, I don't think he's that 5'5", 130 is really small. Even smaller than Bill Hoft. But Gudin's a really good player. I think there's a lot to like with him, and I have a ton of time for his development and what he's able to do. I'm a little surprised he was drafted, but obviously Barrie clearly sees something in him. I thought he was pretty high end. I expected him probably more for next year as opposed to this year, but he is eligible and he was taken. So, good on him for being selected. I'll get to the other two in a minute here, but I'm going to go head back to the comments now and, make sure that, I answer everybody here. So who are the top prospects for the 2027 OHL draft. You're saying for the 2027 OHL draft? That's 2 years from now. Are you sure? I can talk about it. I have a few names, but nothing that's super set. Just comment below if you really want me to talk about the 2027 OHL draft. I might do it after if you don't mind, if you want to stick along. But I will talk about it if you really want me to. They're just young. That's the only thing. They're 13, 14 years old. There's a few of them I can talk about, but there's not many. And then are there Ukrainians on my list? I do have a couple guys actually, yes, that are Ukrainian. One guy in particular that I really could see selected probably later round is Mykola Kosarev. Played for Norway. I think he played for Stavanger in Norway. I think he's a guy who should see himself selected today. Some other guys Ukrainian that have been selected in the past is Enoch Pazzi has been selected as well. But I think Kosarev is a guy who likely will find himself drafted today. The other name I had in mind was Mikhailo Hapanenko, another Norwegian under 20 player who both of them played really well at the U18s for Ukraine and were very impactful players at the D1A level. I think those two guys are guys who will be selected from Ukraine. Those are the two I have on my watch list. There's a few more that I have in mind, but those two seem to be the most likely to be selected, in my opinion. So really appreciate the question. Thank you much for that. All right. So we'll go here now to the rest of the picks here. Jan Laris, I don't have a book on. Yakutsanak, I know of him. I don't have much on him either. Vladimir Dravecki going to Brantford. I like Dravecki a lot. He's a very skilled player. I think he's still finding his game a little bit at the at the junior level. Very good high-end skill player. Somebody with a lot of good shooting ability, a lot of good skating as well. Definitely somebody you can put on your second power play at the junior level, and you'll be able to manage it very well. Good breakout pass. Good shifty hands as well. Very offensively gifted guy. Defensive work still needs to be had there a little bit. And I think offensively he's still working to find a little more pro-ready ways to score goals and be impactful. So I think the CHL is a perfect development spot for him. And Brantford so far has had some really good selections. I really like what they've done with their imports today. Rimouski goes and gets Dovydas Yukna, Lithuanian-born. I had him on my watch list. He was a guy. I have actually a few Lithuanians. I think that'll be selected today. Really like Dovydas. I think he's a guy who in CHL, he would be a decently impactful player. He may need a little bit of an adjustment, but going to a system in Rimouski that's developed guys like Lafreniere and Crosby and a few other really high-end players. Yukna is a guy who I think will be a very developmentally savvy player. Somebody who I really like what he brings to the table, and he's a bigger frame kid at 6'4" and about 200 pounds. Did really well at the U20 level in Switzerland, and I think he's ready for the CHL. I think he will have a little bit of an easier development switch than a guy like Florian Schenk did last year. Lars Steiner obviously came from the Swiss League last year. He was mentioned in last year's stream, actually, when I was doing the stream last year. Sorry, I'll get to that comment in a minute, but a lot to like about Dovydas, and I think he will be a guy who comes to the CHL and plays for Rimouski, no question. Lethbridge here, great selection with Filip Novak. If the Czech guys are still on here, this to me is the best Czech prospect in 2026. I think there's a real first-round upside with Filip Novak. Great player. I don't have any weaknesses for him. I don't think he's anybody who, you can't really, project in the National Hockey League. I think he will be excellent at the NHL level. I think he has proven it time and again throughout U17, U20 levels in Czech that he's clearly a step above the rest. I think the best Czech player that's an 07 born. Him and Kadalichki, I think, are a class above a lot of the other guys, including Benach. Let's go here. So talked about those guys. We got Michael Sverchek, another guy selected by Detroit, going to Windsor. Going to be really close to Detroit here. I think he's likely to report to the Windsor Spitfires. Should be a really impactful player at the OHL level, somebody who will get a lot of time to find his oats and find his ability offensively. Should be a very impactful player for Windsor. And again, another player I think should step into Windsor and be pretty highly thought of very early. Moncton takes Eric Wallenius. Big kid here. Isaac, you asked that question about what do you think about Moncton's pick. I'm going to talk about her now. Wallenius he's an intriguing player. More of a developmental guy. I don't think he'll be a guy who's an immediate impact for Moncton. Probably will find himself in the bottom pairings at least this year. And I think you look at him as a guy who could be here 2 or 3 years in Moncton. Should he play well this year? I think he'll be somebody who gets looked at, like I said, for 2 or 3 years. Bigger frame kid, 6'4", 215. A little more physical than a lot of these guys have been selected today, so he will bring that edge. And, he'll lean on guys and he'll make sure that, his defensive zone is protected. That's the extent I know of him, but really appreciate the question, Isaac. Let me bounce back here. And did comment back. You said yes, the 2027 OHL draft, U14s, U15s. I'm curious who you see separate themselves so far, if anyone. Let me pull up my list here real quick, and so that's the question here. I'm gonna go ahead and put that up just as a reminder for myself. Let me see here. Sorry for the pause, guys. I'm going to go ahead and pull up my 27 OHL draft list for Mr. N here. So I got 2 guys that I'm going to mention here that are guys that have separated themselves. One guy in particular is Tyson Orr. He's a guy who's 2011 born, played for Elgin Middlesex this year. I think he's going to be playing somewhere else this year, if I remember reading that correctly. Had 100 goals at the U14 level this past year. He, to me, is the clear number 1 right now. I think in a lot of scouts' eyes, he's the clear number 1 right now. I wouldn't call him an exceptional status player. I don't think he's that quality. I think he's a very high-end player, though. Definitely a guy who will be, if he's not number 1, he'll definitely be a top 10 player in that year's draft. And then the other kid who I have a little bit of eyes on is James Schooler. He played for the Toronto Junior Canadians this past year as well. He'll be a guy who I think separates himself as well as a really high-end player. But please subscribe to the channel because I will do I don't know if I'll do the 27 draft, but I will do a 2026 OHL draft preview probably closer to September. And if you want to ask that question at that time too, I might have more detailed answers at that time. But those are the 2 names I know that are sticking out for me in terms of guys who I've personally had some understanding of. So really appreciate the question, and please stay tuned to more content. Please subscribe. Jake with the comment of the stream so far. Obviously a joke, but really funny. Watching out for Ukrainian goalie, Putin took your head off. Love that one. That was really funny. Thank you for that. Isaac. So Isaac says, but like when all the really good players from Moncton are gone, he will come up. He might play this year, honestly. I just think he'll be more of a bottom pairing guy, Isaac. That's just my thought. Thanks for that, though. Thanks for the question. There's a Russian comment there. Io, if you can respond in English, that'd be greatly appreciated. I know that's hard to ask, but I just won't be able to translate this in time, so I feel bad for that. So I apologize that I won't be able to get to that, at least during the stream. If I'm able to Google Translate it, I might be able to respond after, but leave that as a comment, and I might throw a response back. Should Google Translate lead me down the right path? And then Isaac, yeah, no problem, man. Appreciate you as well. Appreciate those commenting. Again, 123 of you on here, and there's a few of you commenting. Do yourself a favor. Please leave any comments that you guys would like answered before the end of the stream. I will definitely answer anything that's out there, and really appreciate those questions. When I can answer them, I will. So I'm gonna go ahead and go back now to the picks. Picks here. So we got Kosarev. I was just talking about him, and he gets selected. Mykola Kosarev gets selected by the Victoria team in the Western Hockey League. Played for Stavanger this past year. Like his game a lot. I think he's a definite guy who has some offense, really good potential. He played well at the U18 level for Ukraine at the 1A U18s, and I think also played at the U20 level for Ukraine as well. I think he'll be somebody who steps into the top 4 in Victoria pretty easily and should do really well. But you're getting a very good offensive defenseman with this kid, and a guy who can really handle his own. Oscar Hemming goes to Kitchener at 56. I really like this pick here for Kitchener. I think he's a very good goal scorer. Clearly did really well at the U18 level, played at the under 20 level as well in Finland and did well as well. I think he was just under a point per game in limited action, but led the U18 league in scoring. Was a very impactful player and definitely somebody who I think will come to North America and do really well. So far, Brantford and Kitchener, I think, are my favorite drafts so far in terms of the guys they've selected. I think both guys that both teams have selected will be very impactful players at the CHL level. Spokane takes Linus Viard, German goaltender. I'm shocked he went, honestly. I don't really know if I love the pick there by Spokane. I think he probably needs to be in the DNL and play at the German under 20 league a little bit longer. I don't know that he's CHL ready, so I'm pretty shocked by that pick. But it is late in the first round, so maybe they're going for what they had. Linus Funk now goes for London. Not their typical pick, actually. I'm very shocked by that pick by London. I thought they would go for, some really high-end Russian or go for something that was a little bit more, high-end upside. Funk is a decent player. He's not anything incredible, but, it's a shocking pick for London there. Don't know if I necessarily think he was the best guy available. And then Swift Current goes for Stepan Kuryachenkov. I don't have a book on him, unfortunately, so I don't really know much about him, but he's a player that should be intriguing. One of the last picks of the I'm sorry, let me bounce back here. One of the last picks here for the first round is Yaroslav Brizgalov. Played for the USHL. I actually should have had him on my list as a Belarusian player. One of the best Belarusians out of the 07 group. Brizgalov is the guy who I think could be a really good overager candidate should he have a good year in Madison Hat. And obviously they're going to be looking to replace what Gavin McKenna has lost. And, they're going to clearly lose guys like Caden Lindstrom. They're going to lose, Andrew Basha is probably a guy who's going to leave. Gavin McKenna. All those guys are leaving. And I don't think there's a real opportunity for these guys to be selected. So I think having Brizgalov, he's going to have a lot of opportunity to get himself in a top 6 role, and I really like that selection for Medicine Hat. Jan Skok finishes off the first round here for Vancouver. Really high-end player as well. Good defenseman. Wasn't really picked in this draft in 2025 for the NHL, and he'll be a guy who I think uses the CHL time wisely. Should be a really impactful player, and we'll see what happens with Jan Skok. Chris says, where can you see this? There's no live feed. This is the live feed. It's not with the CHL. Obviously, I'm not affiliated with the Canadian Hockey League in any way. But if you want instant analysis, I'm your guy. And there is no other feed. So there's no video feed of this. all of this is happening just through this page here. So I'm just covering all those picks. So if you want to know more, stay tuned. Again, thanks for everybody that's subscribed and has been on this channel, and really appreciate you guys being engaged in the content. Like I said, any comments, I'll get to the comments later when I can, and really appreciate you guys subscribing here. We're up to 252 subscribers. I'd love to get to about 400 by the end of this year. That's kind of my goal. So let's get that out there and let's share the content. And even if you're watching a recording, please do yourself a favor. Please subscribe to the channel. I'm going to be talking a lot more about junior hockey as well as the CHL import draft and other guys. So you want to follow a nerd like myself and you're a prospect nerd, do yourself a favor. Please subscribe to the channel. Really would appreciate it. We'll go ahead now. Peterborough, Yuri Kamas. I don't have a book on him for Penticton. I can't really talk about him. But somebody mentioned Leon Kolarek earlier in the stream. He goes to Peterborough here. I love this selection for Peterborough. I think that's an excellent, excellent pick. Kolarek should be an impact player from day one of the best players on their roster day one. Ton of skill. Will be a really high-end player in 2026. Just a really impressive hockey player. Somebody who I have a ton of time for. Clearly shown it already at the Alps Hockey League level. Very impactful in terms of his offense. One of the best players that was eligible from the 07 class in this draft. Very impactful and one of the high-end 26 prospects that's available. The next goalie here, Shayakov. I don't have a book on him. Haven't watched him before. So, yeah, unfortunately, I can't really speak on him. But, yeah, so that's where we're at right now. 64 picks in. We're just starting the second round. I'm going to go ahead and look through here and see if there's any of the guys who I have on my list that have been selected, and there's a few. Really shocked that a lot of the Latvian kids haven't been selected yet. I thought for sure there would be a few selected. There's a couple Lithuanians I think that still will be selected. I'll go through some other guys that I think will be selected in next year's draft as well later on. It should be interesting to see. Sorry, I want to look up one thing real quick. I'm just updating my chart here. Yep. Okay. Both my German guys were already selected. All right. So I'll bounce back here. Jan Trefny just went here. I don't have a book on Jan. Don't really know much about Jan. But Moose Jaw took him there. So, some other guys who I think I'm shocked I haven't been drafted yet. Nikita Klyapov, or actually Nikita was selected, wasn't he? Let me look at that again. I think he was earlier, and I just didn't add him on my list. Or no, he wasn't. Okay. So Nikita Klyapov is a guy who I'm shocked wasn't selected. I think he still could be selected in this draft. He should be selected in this draft. Ilya Morozov is another player that's really impactful as well. Should be a very good player. Simon Belahorsky, the 08 born. He should be a guy who gets his selection here, not in the not too distant future. Timothy Kazda is another guy who should be selected from Slovakia. Michael Kunderlich, Luve Harmstam, Melvin Novotny might be a guy who's selected here as well. A lot of the Latvians I've already mentioned, Oliver Zmerniks, some other guys that haven't been selected yet. Michael Eriksson is a guy who I'm shocked hasn't been selected yet. Ludvig Lofton, Itur Pana, Simas Ignatavicius, Linus Roth, Mats Kleibo, Bruno Easton. There's more guys that I could mention that it could be selected. So I think there's a lot of guys that still will be selected. It's just a matter of finding where they go, and I'll be curious to see what other guys are out there and the different stuff. So Pepe here, comment of the day here. This Hidden Hockey channel is no joke. This dude goes in the weeds for these players. Hey, appreciate you, man. I'm a nerd, man. What can I say? I love following all levels of hockey, and a lot of these guys aren't really scouted or valued, right? So, there's some guys who, I might talk about them in a few years down the line, they get selected. So it's just a matter of, I catch them early. I don't know. I tend to love this stuff, and I know you've been a big supporter of the channel, and he says, appreciate you, bro. I appreciate you too, man. I will always do this for you guys. And obviously Pepe is a pretty satisfied subscriber of the channel. He's commented on a lot of videos. I've seen his comments and know that he supports a lot. So really appreciate you guys. Even if you guys support silently, I love doing this stuff. It's a passion of mine. So I really appreciate you guys. And the comments are really nice. Those motivate me to want to look harder and know more about the game and talk about the little hidden aspects of hockey that most people don't talk about. So really appreciate that comment. It means a lot. Thank you. So just talked about Simon Belahorski. He got selected. Guelph took him here in the second round. That's a really good selection by the Guelph Storm. Simon Belahorski is a really high-end guy for 2027. I would expect him to be a first-round guy in that year, regardless of, his current development track definitely leads him to be a first-rounder in 2027. Already gotten some Czech League games as a pro, at the pro level. Should come to Guelph and be one of their best players, no question. Really like his games. And, overall, I think there's a ton of really good skill with Simon Belahorski. You get a big frame, get a really high-end skill player. Trying to like with him. I think he's a very, very skilled hockey player and somebody who I personally have a ton of time for. Should do really well at the CHL level. Definitely a 90 to 100 point player. Not this year, but potentially in this draft year. Patrick Zubek, the Polish Slovakian dual net. Another player who some people had him on the fringe of being selected in the 25 draft. He could be a guy who I think next year could find himself as an overage candidate, especially now if he's coming to the CHL. St. John's is going to really like him as well. So Noah, I'm going to answer your question here. Who should the Sea Dogs take here? I'm a season ticket member for the Sea Dogs, so very curious. You're going to like Zubek a lot, man. Like I think he's a guy who he will fit in at least in your bottom pairing probably this year. And then if he stays a couple years, I think he'll be a top 4 defenseman for you guys, no question. Good offensive upside, really good skater. Came from a lot of unusual development circumstances. He played in the Polish league up until a couple years ago. And here we are now, and we're talking about him in the CHL draft. So his development arc has skyrocketed in the last 2 years. I think he's only 17, 18 years old, so he's got some time, but a really very skilled player. I really like his overall game. I have a ton of time. And you should have a ton of time for Patrick Zubek. I think he'll be a very impactful player for the St. John's Sea Dogs. So, Noah, if you're not subscribed already, but Pepe will tell you the same thing. Subscribe to the channel. I get into the weeds with these guys, and I love to talk junior hockey. So, really appreciate you commenting and leaving your info on here. So, thanks for that. And Pepe's hyping me up here. 109 watching, 15 likes. Hit that like button. Appreciate you guys, man. Spread the word. Find fellow nerds like myself. I'd love to talk with each and every one of you guys. And, whether you're a stan like Mr. Pepe here, or if you're just wanting to know more about prospects, I'd love to talk to you guys and love to talk more about hockey. So really appreciate you guys being on here and supporting these. So I'm going to go ahead and jump more now into the rest of these picks here. I don't have much on Matas Ubel. I don't have a book on him. The next 3 guys I do know a little bit. Daniil Prokhorov was a guy who was selected really high in this past draft. He was, very happy and excited to see that he was selected here. Sarnia, again, taking a really high-end offensive guy, 6'5" and 220 pounds, really impactful player, great overall ability, good skill, great potential with him. He's definitely got an NHL upside, no question. And him coming at the junior level is going to be really scary for a lot of OHL teams should he commit to the OHL. I think he's got skill in spades, and he's a guy who I think at the junior level is going to be super, super impactful. So good job by Sarnia to select him here. Halifax then goes and gets Yasun Mensinen, played for Lukko at the U20 level in Finland. He was a guy who I actually had early ranked for the 25 draft in the preseason. I caught it like one or two viewings of him in the past, and I liked his game. Offensively, was a very impactful player as well. The 07 finish class as a whole, I think, is a little bit undervalued. So I think there was just some more players that you would have liked to see drafted in this year's draft. And I think Menston was a guy who I was pretty shocked to not see selected. Definitely thought he was a late round consideration candidate for sure. Again, he's 5'11", 184 pounds, so he's not exactly small, but he should be able to play well at the junior level, and I think he'll be a really good player for Halifax. Stepan Hoch here for Victoria at 71. He'll be a guy who I think a lot of teams will look at and say, why didn't we select him? Kind of. Victoria is getting a really high end player in terms of he's somebody who has played a lot at the. I think he's actually even gotten some pro time in the Czech Republic. I'm not 100% sure, but I know he's played very high end hockey in the Czech Republic, and for him to come to the junior level, I think he's still looking to find that next part of his game, and I think landing in a spot like Victoria will allow him to do so. A newer program, somebody that in the Western Hockey League you have a little bit more physicality than you probably would in the Czech League. So he'll find himself in the North American game. Not only adjusting to the shorter rink, but also adjusting to a more physical brand of play. So I like him for that selection as well. Jasper Kuta, don't have much on him. Lep Gapanov, same thing. Don't really have a book on him. Pierre Tomech, I know a little bit about. He'll be a guy who probably he probably needs more time. I don't think he'll come over this year. He might be a candidate for next year. These other two guys, I don't know much about Karabayev. I'm actually going to look more into him because, usually you don't see too many guys from the U17 Belarusian team selected. So obviously, clearly there's some upside there. Lucian Bernat, I don't have much of a book on. Michael Kapoch for Wenatchee. He's a guy who I thought played really well for Slovakia a couple times internationally, and the times that, I've caught some glances here and there. I think there's some intrigue in terms of, what he's able to do at the junior level. I think, 6'5" and 220 pounds is a big frame kid for the Western Hockey League, and I think they're going to like him there. I think he's got a real chance to do really well for the Wenatchee Wild, their expansion team in the Western Hockey League. So let's go ahead here. I got a couple more comments here. Could you please describe Victoria, the team who played Kosarev? Are they good? Victoria is actually, they've lost some guys this past year. They're I'm actually going to look at the roster real quick so I can give you more of an answer. I just got to refresh myself real quick. The Royals have had some players develop over time. Some guys that you might know that have played for Victoria. Two of their guys have just left this past year. Cole Reshny was just selected 18th overall in the 2025 NHL draft. He'll play for North Dakota along with Keaton Verhoff, who for the 26 draft is likely a top 5 candidate. So they do develop prospects really well. Kosarev, I think, is going to really like his development opportunities in Victoria. I think they're going to be a pretty decent team. And because Verhoff left and some other guys left, there's a lot of ice time that's available for a guy like Kosarev. And I think he, at the very least, should be a middle pairing guy. I don't know if he'll be a first, on the first power play and playing their first pairing, but I think the second pairing is likely where he'll go. I think he'll like his opportunity. I think there's a real likelihood he'll go there. So thank you for the question there. And then Pepe says, I can't even imagine how much hockey you have to watch to even have a clue who these dudes are. Honestly, some of it is like just minding elite prospects and stat watching. I'm not going to lie and say that there isn't a component of that. But I'm somebody who, once I know who they are, I tend to keep watching. I got a really good memory, so that helps a lot. Yeah, I think there's a ton of ability in terms of being able to watch these guys now more so than ever. I got myself a Flow Hockey subscription as well as you can watch some of these leagues on YouTube as well. It's just a matter of finding the streams. But anybody who wants to be like me, it's not hard to be like me. It's just a matter of doing a lot of research and just having a good memory. Really, is what it comes down to, and then watching a lot of hockey. Like you said, it's something that I encourage others to do if they really love hockey and they're very passionate about it. Obviously, you can scout for a living, but I do it for fun. One day, maybe I'll be blessed to be a scout in the world out there and be doing what I love every day. But until then, I'm enjoying what I'm doing right now on the channel. So appreciate you guys being on here and appreciate you, Pepe. Pepe, I'll get to your next one in a minute here, but I'm going to catch up with some of the picks. Another guy here selected, Arseny Pronin, another Belarusian player, played for Loko Yaroslavl at the MHL level. I don't really have a lot on him other than I know he's a guy who utilizes his size really well. He's listed there at 187, but he is a very physical player. Definitely we should adjust to North American hockey, no problem. Going to North Bay, which isn't necessarily a big hub for a lot of imports, but maybe they find themselves really liking Pronin. And I've never heard of a Belarusian going to North Bay, so I think it's more of a unique development path for Pronin, but should be interesting to see at least to see what he's able to do. I don't have a book on Carl Otto Magnusson. I know of the name. Obviously, that's a big kid at 6'6", so I can't really talk on him. I apologize to the commenter who's with Moncton. I don't have much on Carl Otto Magnusson. Matusz Lisi, I've heard this name before a few times. Only thing I've heard about him really is that he's a great skater. Has a real opportunity to do well at the junior level, and I think Red Deer is a great development system for Matusz. Juraj Durko going to Charlottetown, another Slovak, another guy who's done really well at the Slovak under 20 level, should do really well in juniors as well and be a pretty impactful CHL player. And then Winkelhofer, I don't have much on him, unfortunately. And again, like I said, I'll review all these guys later on. I'll talk more about them as they come through, and I'll probably stay on for a little bit after the recap of the live stream. So we'll see how things go. But, again, really appreciate you guys that are on here and subscribing and being a part of the channel. I'm blessed to be able to do this every day and very fortunate that you guys are really interested in the content. It's awesome that I've been able to cultivate this audience, and hopefully you guys stick along. I would like for more comments on my channel. I would like for more people to engage my content, and really appreciate you guys being on here and being supportive of a live stream and of a draft that's not really covered as much as it is. So I'm kind of glad there's an audience for it and really appreciate you guys being on here. Pepe goes, this is off topic, but if anyone would know, it's probably you. What do you think of Ivan Provisov, the goalie the Flames got from the KHL? Well, he's a guy who played in the CHL. He played for Saginaw for a couple years. I think I had one live viewing of him, actually. I went to go to Saginaw, I think, to watch Misa, and I happened to catch a game of his. He was the goalie at the time for when Misa was early on in his career. And, I think he's a very skilled player. Skilled goalie, I should say. Sorry. He's a bigger frame guy, really good reflexes. I remember him being a really good mover side to side. On his posts, I thought he was excellent in terms of his reflexes. The only thing with him is he's a little bit like Peter Mrazek. He gets out of position decently often. And he's one to make a really acrobatic save and then let in a couple weak goals. So you're getting a very polarizing goalie for the Flames. And I don't know that, he'll be a great backup, I think, behind Dustin Wolf. And, obviously Vladar is going to probably, he'll find his way. But I really like him as a backup behind Wolf. I think he'll make a good living there. And if he stays there for a while, I think he'll be a really impactful player. So thanks for the question, Pepe. Theo Stocksilius goes now to Seattle at 83. I had Stocksilius ranked third round on my draft, and he was selected in the past draft this week. at the NHL. He was definitely somebody who I had my eyes on, no question, going to the CHL. I didn't put him on my list, but I probably should have. He'll be a guy who I think Seattle will really like him. I don't know that, he's got a really good situation in Djurgårdens. They're a really good emerging program in Sweden. So I would be shocked for him to leave Djurgårdens. I think he really will like his opportunities that are available in there. But a CHL option for him is very intriguing. I think, going to Seattle has developed Matthew Barzal. Austin Matthews was famously drafted by them. He would have probably gone there had he not gone to the Swiss League. In his draft year, there was a real possibility that he was going to go to Seattle. They find their opportunities and they develop guys. So Seattle's an interesting development system. They're probably a middle tier program in the Western Hockey League, but they get their opportunities, and it's an opportunity to play in the U.S. too. So you get used to U.S. culture. That's a very underrated thing about going to the CHL for these European guys, is being able to acclimate to North American mindset and culture. Some of you guys can do it, some of them can't. That's why a lot of them come early. You see a lot of the Russians that were taken early in this draft today have already acclimated to the U.S. culture, at least for a year or two. That's a very underrated thing that isn't really talked about. It's a very underrated thing that's not really talked about a lot. And it's something I think there's a lot of value in. And obviously, if you're able to acclimate to North America earlier and learn English earlier and be able to adjust to North American lifestyle, it's going to help you immensely. And that's why I think you're seeing a lot of these guys go early that have already come to North America, but they are of European descent, or Asian descent, if you will. Let's see what other guys are still available that haven't been selected for me yet. Bruno Izdan is a guy from Croatia. He would be a guy I think could be selected. Philip Winkler might be a late round guy. Hapanenko from Ukraine, I think, is a guy who could get selected. He's a 26 draft eligible. Linus Roth just committed to Frölunda recently, but I think a CHL opportunity may present itself for them. I look at a guy like some other names here. Yegor Kim was selected in the USHL draft. A CHL offer might be something in his radar. Played for the Cleveland Barons this past year at the U16 level. Beksultan Makish also got some USHL time. Played for Boston Hockey Academy at the U16 level as well. Or I actually think he even played U15. Was putting up a ton of points. Had over 100 points this past year. Definitely somebody who I think could be looked at in the CHL ranks. Some other guys. All right, I'm not going to talk as much here. I'm going to take a little bit of a break. You guys leave some comments off to the side, and I'll answer them as they go. As you guys know, really appreciate you guys being on here for the content, and I'm sure this video is going to get some good views and a lot of views. So, I really appreciate you guys being on here and really appreciate the support. We're not even halfway through this yet. We still got probably another 100 picks left, or 98 picks left, actually, exactly, before the end of this here. So I'm going to be on here probably for another 2 hours, probably. Maybe an hour and a half, depending on the speed here, if they don't have so many stoppages. But again, appreciate you guys being on here. Appreciate the support. And, please subscribe if you really like the content. And, I'll be able to talk about any more questions you guys want on here. So. I'm going to go ahead and refresh here in case I missed one. No, nobody yet. They're still in a decent spot here. So, yeah, so there's, like I said, so far, a lot of Czechs selected, a lot of Russians selected. Obviously, a couple years ago, you couldn't select Russians because of the ban they had on Russian prospects. But now that the ban has been lifted, clearly there's a lot of really good Russians eligible that are 08 borns, 07 borns. And then next year, there's going to be a lot of 09 borns that I think could see themselves in North America as well, especially with the influence of, Gold Star Agency and Dan Milstein bringing over a lot of these kids to North America. There should be a lot of intrigue with those players in the 09 class. Recently played events against a bunch of OHL 09s and 08s and looked incredible. There was probably about 5 or 6 really good 2009 players. And after this, I'll probably get into like my early top 10 for next year's draft, so you guys can know some of the top 09s to track through the year. But there's some really good players that are 09s that will be high-end NHLers and probably high-end CHLers as well. All right, Guelph obviously is hitting a pause. So we'll see there. I think a trade just happened because I think Flint originally had the pick. Let's see here. Mikhailo Hoponenko. That was the guy we were looking for. Another Norwegian-born kid, or sorry, not or is he no, he's not Norwegian, is he? Yeah, no, sorry, Ukrainian-born. Sorry, Hoponenko. I mentioned him earlier. Both guys have been selected now that I mentioned that were Ukrainian. There might be 1 or 2 more Ukrainians selected, but I don't anticipate more than that. I don't know. I think there's likely those 2 are the 2 that will be selected. And, I think there's a little bit more that, will be available. Mikhailo Hoponenko was very impactful at the U18 level. I thought he was a very good player for Norway at the under 20 level. He's clearly dominated Norwegian juniors for a couple of years now. I haven't really caught a viewing of him necessarily, but just stat watching, he's clearly been a very impactful player and somebody who's super high end. So, not surprised he was selected here. He fits the pedigree of somebody who from a non-traditional hockey country who's dominated at certain levels. He seems like a guy who made a lot of sense to be drafted. So, good selection there by Guelph, and they really did their homework there on getting him. Yeah, so 2 hours in now. Can't believe it's 84 you saw on here. So really appreciate you guys being on here and supporting the channel. And I'm hoping that there's more people that comment and subscribe. And we're at 257 right now. So it'd be awesome if we can get to like 260, 270. That'd be awesome, man. Really appreciate you guys that would subscribe and continue to engage in it, man. I know there's hockey's not a 12 a month a year sport, but I make it seem like it is. So, I like paying attention to this draft stuff. I like paying attention to the National Hockey League, but I also like paying attention to, the non-traditional stuff that's out there in hockey. And it's a real passion of mine. So if you like that stuff, please do subscribe. Please, if you like how I talk and engage in the stuff, please subscribe. And I also don't want to be a gatekeeper here. Any stuff, whether it comes from, the most advanced stuff to, very rudimentary, traditional, very basic stuff, I'm willing to explain all that. So don't feel like I'm gatekeeping anybody by being too advanced in what I'm talking about. Any questions you guys have, feel free to leave them on here. I want this to be a comfortable space to talk hockey, but also learn a lot about hockey. So, for me, it's very important that we're able to do that and be able to share this wonderful sport with anybody and everybody we can. And for me, it's very important that I do this lesser known stuff so people are aware of it, but also I just like to teach people. So it's a big part of why I do this stuff and why I love talking hockey. So Jacob Sturm goes, why some teams pass their picks? Isn't it better to select someone? Sorry, I should have mentioned this earlier, Jacob, but they're only allowed so many import spots. So you're going to see a lot more people passing in the second and third round because they just have all their European guys either from the prior year. They got a guy in the 24 CHL import draft and they still have their rights, or they've exhausted it through today. Some of these teams only have 1 or 2 guys that are able to be selected. Some of them have gotten rid of all their Europeans and they're probably going all in and selecting 3 guys today. So that's the reason they're only allowed 3 guys on their roster at a time internationally. And then a lot of those guys, after those spots, they could be selected, but they may come over next year. They might not be not this upcoming year, but the year following. So there might be some of these guys that are selected today that won't come to the CHL immediately next year. They might come the year after. So great question. Thank you for that. Let's see here. We got still waiting here on another pick here. It's obviously going slow. I don't know if guys have passed on some of these guys yet, but I'm going to go ahead one sec, peeps, and retweet my I'm on Twitter as well, guys, or on X. So if you guys want to follow along on there too, I'm going to be putting more content up after the draft ends. I just wanted to focus on the live stream, but I'm going to go and retweet it on there so we can get some more people on here. And, we'll talk more about some of the really good European prospects that are still yet to be selected. But, again, Jacob, thanks for the question, man. I appreciate you. And if you guys have any more questions, feel free to leave them on the side. This video is going to do really well. I'm actually super excited that we've had so many people on here, and those that are staying on, which is awesome. Don't be shy. Leave any comments you guys want. Even if it's NHL related, that's fine too. I'll talk about it. So just follow along. Anything that's on the bottom there, I have my ticker going on the bottom with all my handles. Really appreciate you guys subscribing, and I'm excited to put more content out in the coming weeks here. So keep it going. I want to grow this as much as I can. I can't believe I've grown it already to 250 subscribers, and let's get it to, I'd love to get to 300, 400 more, So we're going to go ahead here, and I don't know what's going on here with Newfoundland. I don't know if they're waiting on picks. I'm going to check Twitter to see what's going on. See what's happening here. All right, let's see what's going on here. Sorry, guys, for going silent for a little bit. Just looking for some stuff real quick. All right, let's see here. I don't know what's going on with Charlottetown. Newfoundland. Maybe they're picking some real weird guy that I don't even know about. So we'll see what happens here. But I'm very curious to see where some of these guys will go here. But waiting for more. Now everybody's tweeting about the CHL import draft apparently. But let's see here. There we go. Finally, we got another Russian kid selected, Alexei Zhukov. Played for the Long Island Gulls. Teammates Andre Gudin and I believe Alexei Vlasov also played for the U16 Gulls this past year. They really loaded up on Russians for some reason. Not really sure what the connection is there. Probably some Russian trainer or coach that linked these kids to North America in some way. That's usually what happens. But I don't have a big book on him, and unfortunately, I think when I focused on watching them, I didn't know much about this kid. And I think the times I happened to watch, I either wasn't paying attention to him or didn't know about him. So he's a guy who likely they did a lot of homework on him, and comes from Yekaterinburg. And for those who know where Yekaterinburg's at and who's developed out of there, Pavel Datsyuk came out of Yekaterinburg. So clearly a town that loves their hockey, and clearly got a really good development system there. And, I think Newfoundland's going to really like that selection at the very least. And I'll have to do more homework on him to find out more about him. Thomas Roch, another guy I don't really have a book on, unfortunately. I just don't know much about him. But a lot of these guys, I might start saying that for a lot of these guys because, it's hard to follow all these guys in all these leagues. But, I try to find what I can and watch what I can. But I really appreciate those that have tuned in and stayed on. And, hopefully you guys really enjoy and engage in the content. So, all right, let's see. There's a couple more picks that were had here. Ermolenko, another guy I don't really have much on, but I can talk about Martins Klaucons. Another one of the Latvians who I thought might be selected. I didn't mention him earlier, but he's a guy who I'm not surprised was selected. Played in the NAHL for the St. Cloud Norsemen this year. A guy who I think he still has some development in his game. I think he'll struggle at first at the CHL level. Playing in the Q, I think it's a little bit easier because the quality of competition, albeit is still very high, is not as high as the OHL in the OHL. I think with Klaucons, he's a guy who could be a really impressive player given the right development opportunities. It's just a matter of allowing his game to get more confident. He's getting U20 time. He'll probably be a guy who plays for Latvia at the World Juniors next year. They have a really good 07 and 08 class in Latvia, so I'm not surprised that some of these kids are finally being selected, but there should be more that are coming down the pipeline. If not this year, definitely next year. You might see a few of them drafted in the later rounds here today, but Klaucons is a guy who I think is some real legit upside. And, this year he might struggle a little bit. He's going to probably need some time, but there's a really good player in there. Jakob Seidel, I don't have much of a book on. Lasse Belius. Sudbury takes him here. That's a good pick there. I think Lasse is a guy who probably will come to North America and play for Sudbury. Instant top 4 guy, in my opinion, for Sudbury. I think he's a really good puck transporter, somebody who really understands the game at a very advanced level and really good at detailing some small things on the ice. He's definitely a coachable player, definitely a guy who I think learns from his mistakes quite well. Isn't the most offensively gifted guy in the world, but I really like his gap control, like his stick in terms of how he stops pucks and stuff, and stops pucks from coming in from passes and things is what I mean. But there's a real good upside with him, and I think he would adjust to the junior level pretty easily, especially in major junior. Can you tell me more about Guelph's team for next season? What are Hopenenko's chances to get to the top 6 forwards? With Guelph, they struggle a little bit this year. They're definitely a team that's going to be on the rise, though, for sure. They have a really established coach that's been there for a long time, George Burnett. At least has coached there. I mean, he's clearly involved in the Guelph Storm quite a bit. Next year is quite the ask for Hopenenko, in all honesty. I don't know that he'll play in our top 6 next year. I think likely in 20, like after his draft year, I think he'll be a guy who gets more time. But he'll be probably, if he can take advantage of his limited time in North America and finds his groove, I think he'll be a guy who likely be a pretty impactful player in 2026, 2027. I just don't think next year. I think it's a lot to ask of him. If he's able to do it, that's great. I think he's clearly got some real high-end skill. But I think it's bold to assume that he'll be able to do that next year. But thank you for the question. Really appreciate it. Let's roll on here. We got some more picks. Adam Klaus, guy played in the Swiss League at the U17 level, shorter defenseman. He's going to Cape Breton, or Game Breton, sorry. Vancouver took a pass on theirs because I think they're actually full on their import spots. Torkel Generso, I hope I got that right. Played the USHL this year. Really high end score at the USHL level this year, actually. I think he was a top 10 scorer in the USHL this year, playing for Blainville Brobane. He'll be a guy who I think will be a top 6 forward for them. They'll really like his influence and what he's able to do on the ice. Very skilled player. I don't know if he's like a 100-point upside player or 90-point upside guy, but he'll definitely get you 50 or 60 points, no question. Should acclimate pretty easily like UMJHL. Let's see here. Who else we got? Off topic, but are we expecting Ehlers to sign today, or do you think it'll take more time? I think he's trying to boost his value, in all honesty. Selfishly as a Detroit fan, I'd love to find out that he'd want to come to Detroit. That'd be amazing. I think likely he'll probably go to a no-tax state. That seems to be the new trend to do. As far as what I expect him to sign for, I think he'll be probably a $9.5, $10 million player. And I think he's waiting for that. I don't know if that's been offered to him necessarily, but I think he'll be probably given that in some way, shape, or form. I'm maybe a little bullish in saying that, but I think he's a really high-end player, somebody with a lot of skill. But I do think he's waiting his options, no question. I think he wants to drive his value up, knowing that he's one of the kingfish in free agency, and your agent's probably going to tell you to do that. So I think that's what Ehlers is trying to do. He's had a lot of missed development time too. Like, he's had a lot of missed opportunities. He's had some injuries. I think he's trying to maximize whatever he can get in the salary. Thanks for that, Noah. I'm gonna go ahead now and let's see what else we got going here. All right, we're still waiting. We'll see what other guys are out there that I think will be selected. Again, if you guys are, like I said, I've been sharing content also on X as well as Instagram, and you guys are clearly on YouTube, so you guys found me there. But do yourself a favor, please subscribe. Make sure you're on the content. I know I'm probably being annoying and shilling for the content, but really trying to grow for the community and try and get as many people as I can involved in watching my stuff, as well as being able to inform people that maybe don't know. This is a safe space to learn more about hockey, and this is stuff that isn't covered, right? So I'd like to inform the masses if I can. Brandon's clearly waiting here, so I think there was a trade, because I think actually Portland originally had that pick. Yeah, they did. Okay, so we shall see. I'm also paying attention to the free agency right now for the NHL. I'm a little bit behind, so bear with if I'm not really inclined to know as much as I normally would. With that, I'll be looking at that after, but let's see what else here. And then Noah says, yeah, I just was curious if there was like reasons or strategies for what he was doing. Thanks for the answer. Yeah, no problem, Noah. I mean, that's kind of what I thought. I mean, I'm assuming that's why he's waiting. I think a lot of it too is, and I think in time this will come out. I think there was a lot of tampering this offseason. I mean, the fact that they've been able to, Marner already had printed jerseys in Vegas, and he just signed yesterday, and there's already in the team store. Like, there's some intrigue in terms of what I think, happened this offseason. There's an interesting book to be written about where things are going. I don't think I'm wrong in speculating that there's a lot more going on than we really know right now. I'm just going to say that. Can you tell what awaits Quebec Remparts next year in your opinion? What do you think about Ovcharov and Karabaev, and will they get a place in the top 6 forwards? Quebec should be a really good squad next year. I'm going to look at the roster real quick because I just want to – maybe there's some things I don't really know off the top of my head. So let me give you a good answer. Let me give you a really complete answer instead of me just talking out, just talking, just talk. Let's see here. So I'm going to look at next year's or last year's roster, but they got the big 6'8" kid in Louis Antoine Deneau, who I think a lot of people were shocked wasn't selected. He'll be probably their starter next year. Pretty big goaltender. Clearly, he's got some time there. Defensively, I don't love their defense, if I'm being honest. I think they would be wise to maybe look at somebody defensively. I think there's a lot of work to be done there. Forward wise, Maddox Dagonet is a guy who his dad, I think, played for actually Montreal, if I remember correctly. Pierre was a very impactful player. I think he'll be a pretty leaned on guy next year. I would fully expect, Felix Provenos is a guy who I think could be a really impactful player as well. Jaden Rousseau, a lot of and Andre Straka is an import that they're going to have. So they're going to probably likely, I think they're actually done drafting today. They should have a decent roster next year. I don't know that he'll, I don't know that they'll have like a really, I don't know if they're going to be guys that contend for the Memorial Cup, but I think they're going to have an interesting roster to say the least. And I think they'll probably acquire some more guys that we don't know about yet. Ovcharov and Karabayev. For Karabayev, I don't really have a book on him. I'm sorry. I can't really inform you on that. Ovcharov should be a guy who I think fits in their middle six. Definitely a guy who will make their team, no question. Karabayev might be a guy that maybe comes in 26, 27. I don't know that he'll be there next year even. But Ovcharov should be a guy who fits in decently well, and I think he'll be probably a second-line guy for them, is my guess. But thanks for the question, Hockey. Really appreciate it. Noah says on here, I think a lot of people look past this year's free agency and are primarily focused on next year. Yeah, it's possible. I think my Wings did that. I thought for sure this would be the year they would strike, and they may still. I think it'll be more in the trade market, but we'll see. We'll see what happens. But yeah, thank you for that, Noah. Andrew says, do you think Ilya Protas will be back in Windsor next year? I don't know, man. God, he would be dominant if he came back, wouldn't he? I don't think it's impossible to think with him and Ethan Belchetz and some of the guys they've gotten today. He could be a 130-point player in the OHL. I really think that. It's super. He would be incredible for them to get him back. I think there's a possibility of him coming back. He's not an NHL player right now. I don't think he wants to go NCAA. He leans to me like he'll come back, but we'll see if he does. Windsor could be a team that really looks very dominant as well. They look like they could be Memorial Cup, contenders as well and win an OHL championship. There's no question. You look at, I think Windsor, London, the usual suspects are all going to be really, really good this year. And, I think, I think there's a real possibility for sure, Andrew, that he'll come back. It's just a matter of, should there be another development opportunity? They put him in Europe. I don't know. I don't think so. He'll probably land there. Matt says, which city do you live in? So I live in Southeast Michigan. I'm not, just for comfort reasons, I'm not going to say what city, but I live in Southeast Michigan. OHL team wise, I follow a lot of Michigan teams. So, Saginaw Spirit, Flint Firebirds. I'm a Wings fan ultimately, but I do watch a lot of hockey. I played roller hockey growing up. I played really high end roller hockey actually. Played travel from the ages of 10 to 14, 15. Quit playing travel, played house against a lot of the same travel kids that I would normally play with anyway. Got to play against some really good players that have gone on to play D1, and some of them have even gone on to play pro. So that's kind of my hockey background, and clearly, I just have been obsessed with hockey as a growing up and with the drafts in particular, and junior hockey has been a real interest of mine now for 7, 8, 9 years for, in an extensive way. So I follow hockey for a long time, and, it's something I'm clearly passionate about. So really appreciate you commenting and asking for the background. And, thanks for your asking questions about the Ukrainian prospects, and we'll see how many more come out today. Let me jump ahead here because I think I'm way behind on the picks. I am indeed. So let me go ahead here. We're going to talk about, I don't have much on Shurigan or Holinsky. Gleb Semenov is a really intriguing player. He actually got traded. How did he get selected? So he was previously a London Knight. For those that don't know, he was a London Knight. Played for the London Knights for a little bit. Somehow London always seems to get around this stuff. Eventually went to Red Deer, got a weird trade where he went in the Austin Elliott trade. He got shipped the other way. Austin Elliott came to the OHL and was their goalie this year, and lost like one game. That's fascinating. He will be a European guy who, should he come to Baie-Comeau and play for Baie-Comeau, has played in all 3 junior leagues, which I don't know that's ever happened. I think that's a first. So that's fascinating. I don't know that that's ever happened before. I don't think that ever has. So there you go. You guys witnessed some history there. Yeah, wow, that's freaking wild. Okay. We learn something new every day, I guess. Robert Snodin's here. Another Latvian I thought would be selected. Penticton takes him in the second round. I think that's a really savvy pick. Played for Shattuck St. Mary at the prep level this year. I like his game a lot. I think he's going to be a really, really good hockey player. Definitely has some NHL upside. He should come to the Western Hockey League next year, and I think Penticton will give him a lot of opportunity. I think he'll be more than ready to play at the Western Hockey League level, and it should be fun to see. I'm really curious now. What? Yeah, I think that's a home run pick there by Penticton. And then Brampton takes Tinas Luke Koblar, or Brampton does, sorry, a Norwegian player selected by the Toronto Maple Leafs. They're obviously going to want to keep him close in Ontario, so they can monitor his development. That makes a ton of sense. I'm not surprised at all by that selection. I like his game a lot too. I think he's somebody who really rose a lot late in the draft process. Not a lot of people knew about him early on, but he's clearly shown that he's very capable and very driven hockey player. So there's no surprise that he'd be selected, and I think he'll be a very good player at the WHL or at the OHL level. Sorry, sooner rather than later. Andrei Bondarev, the 102 here for Oshawa. This kid's a massive goalie, but he's also been a very, very good goalie at the U16, U17 level. Great project pick here by Oshawa. I think he'll be, I don't think this year he'll do a lot, but next year I would expect him to be their starter, and I think there's a ton to like with him. Really good player, and no surprise that he'd be selected here. Vladislav Murzov, I know of him. I don't have a book on him, though. I haven't watched him personally play. Saskatoon passes. They've clearly hit their mark here. And then Ignat Shumalin. Actually, there was a guy who commented this earlier. Another Russian. They're really investing in the Russians this year. Yeah, there you go. He just commented. Yeah, he's happy. Good for Ignat. I don't know much about him, but I'm sure he's a great player. The Russian guy can fill in, and if you understand Russian, he'll probably tell you more. But he'll be a guy who I think will come to the CHL, and obviously with a couple more Russians, they're clearly investing in those guys, and should be fun to see. Yeah, interesting there. No, I'll get to your comments in a minute. And Jacob, I just saw yours, so I'll talk about those in a few minutes. And let's see here. So, all right, I'm caught up here now on the draft picks. And like I said, I'll do a quick review of everything afterwards. I'm going to get to the comments now. I honestly don't know who the 3 Sea Dogs overagers are going to be next year, and if they will draft with their last pick or skip or imports, you meant. Okay. You don't know who their 3 imports will be. So yeah, let me see here. Sorry, let me just remember who their imports even are right now that were selected. I've been so focused on this draft that I actually forgot. Let's see who their imports were last year. So no goalies. They had Eric Smateko, who I think he'll likely go to the AHL. So yeah, I mean, you got Florian Schenk. I think Schenk actually, I don't know if he'll come back next year. Yeah, he's already committed to play in Switzerland again for next year. So I have a feeling that, I mean, you guys have all 3 import spots open, so you guys will likely take all 3 players. It'll be everybody who selected today, Noah, who likely will be your imports. I don't know if all 3 of them will come, so that might open a spot for you even next year, or for an import to come through trade during the year. I would just look at the guys that were selected today. I don't remember them off the top of my head because we got 80 picks that have just gone. I needed to soak in a little bit, but yeah, I would think that those are going to be the guys, that are your imports, and I think probably 1 or 2 of them will come over. So thanks for that, Noah. What do you think of Filip Ružička? Huge kid, man. He's 6'6". I think he's the best rated goalie I think he's an 08 born, if I remember correctly. I think he's the best 08 born goalie that the Czechs have. I think he'll be a guy who clearly is going to find himself in NHL radars. I think he's eligible next year, if I remember correctly. I would expect him to go fairly early, probably one of the top 5 goalies picked next year. 6'7", 205. I'm actually kind of surprised nobody's taken him yet. Probably because he's played at the U17 level. I don't think a lot of people are as attentive to the U17 level as they would be for U20. I'm curious to see what, if teams select him today. I think he's a real candidate to be selected today if a team really likes him already. But at the very least, if he's not taken today, I think next year he's a guy to watch, no question. I think he'll be a guy who, he could find himself very, very likely in the CHL. I think anybody would be happy to take him. I mean, everybody was really excited about Michael Hrabal. I think he's a better moving goalie than Michael Hrabal was, even at his size. I've only caught clips of him. I haven't watched games of him, obviously, because it's hard to get clips of that. But I'm excited to watch him. I think he's a really intriguing guy and one of the better goalie prospects for 26 that a lot of people just don't know yet. I think he'll be a guy who gets a lot more on public radars pretty shortly. So thanks for that, Jake. Let's go. Tri-City Storm fan here. If Michael Prado goes to Regina, keep an eye on him. He's had a huge impact on turning the Storm season around late in the year and getting us back in the playoff picture. It's good to know. I'm a Wings guy, so I appreciate you providing that context. Really appreciate it. I'm leaning. I didn't love the selection. I'll be honest, at first for me as a Wings fan, but honestly, if that's really true and you've watched them a lot more than I have, that's great to hear from a Wings fan perspective, and it's great to hear from just a draft perspective. I think Regina would really benefit from having him be. I would assume he's going to be their starter next year, and I think he'll be a guy who probably is pretty impactful. So, no surprise that he would want to consider the CHL. And I feel bad for these USHL teams that get these kids that are really great assets, because they're not going to be able to really retain them if this is the trend that's going on. I think, USHL teams will have these kids probably in their U16, U17 year. They're going to probably rely on getting those kids very early and have them be that development step before heading into the CHL, which isn't ideal. And I think the USHL quality is super underrated, in my opinion. But, at the very least, Canadian Hockey League is a lot more established. They tend to have, more tradition in terms of some really good development systems and more guys to get drafted there. So, I understand why the path would be the way it is. But thanks for the context there. And then I think you added more here. You did. We got him way past the midpoint of the season after playing multiple goalies, trying to figure out things for the Storm, and Michael was an absolute long goal. Yeah, awesome. I mean, it's great to hear. I'm excited to see more about him, and I haven't caught a live viewing of him yet, but I'm eager to learn more about him, and I appreciate the context. If you're not subscribed, you sound like my perfect version of a subscriber, so please subscribe if you haven't already. Really appreciate the context, and thanks for that. You're informing everybody here. Ruzicka, I didn't realize he was picked. So, yeah, home run pick there by Brandon. Brandon will love Vladimir Ruzicka. I think he'll be – I don't know if he'll start next year because – actually, wait, no, aren't they graduating Bjarnason? I think Bjarnason's – this is his last year this year, if I remember correctly. Yeah, because he ended up going – yeah, they did graduate Bjarnason. So they had him, and then they had Ethan Eskett. Ethan Eskett will probably start next year for Brandon, but then you have him, and you have Vladimir Ruzicka. Like that's a duo. You got a 5'10" goalie and a 6'7" goalie. That'll be wild. But good for Brandon. Really like that selection there, and he should be a home run pick for them. No, it's the thanks to answer my question. By the way, nice to learn about these players. My favorite team. Absolutely, man. Like I probably will do more as I can through the year. But yeah, really appreciate it. Thank you, man. Let me go back to the picks here, and then I'll get to that comment I just put up. Max Vestergaard here goes for Kingston. Another really savvy selection. I don't know that he'll come over. He's got a really good thing in Frölunda. And Kingston tends to have a hard time getting imports over to them. But if he does come over, he's a very impact player. I would not be shocked to see him be a very intriguing guy to watch. He's a guy who's in Finland and playing in a Swedish team. So that's got to ruffle some feathers, and he's clearly not afraid of being controversial. So, good on him, I guess. And, so I'm going to look up Furovic. I think I've heard of this kid before, but I don't know much about him. Let me see. Yeah, I don't have a ton of context on this kid, but Furovic's an 08 born. He should be intriguing. Shawinigan takes him. It's a very atypical pick for Shawinigan. 107 here, you got Alisher Sarkinov, Kazakhstani kid. Prince Albert took him. Spokane actually took his brother Asen Ali, and Asen Ali was just selected in the NHL draft this past week. Sarkinov is a really good player. I don't know much about his brother, but if he's anything like his brother, he's going to be a very impactful player in the CHL and for the Western Hockey League. I think they will love him in Prince Albert. Adam Israelov. Barry, again, another Russian kid. Israelov is a really, really savvy player, played for the Carolina Junior Hurricanes. Super skilled player. Really, really like his game. Scored a ton of points this year. I think he had over 100 this year, if I remember correctly, at the U16 level. Just super, super impressive. I like Barry's so far. They've been very, very savvy in finding really good selections. Philip Kowalczyk, another defenseman. He should be a really impactful player for Drummondville as well. Probably a middle pairing guy. That's the notes I got on him. And then 888 Huskers again. Yeah, the regular season finale of Tri-City versus Lincoln with some wild footage for goalie saves. Both goalies were having to play out of their minds because their teams were playing bad D. I'll have to watch for that. Thanks for that. I think actually I was actually planning on watching the game before you even said that. So I guess that's good to know. I'm watching some stuff over the summer just to kind of get some additional context on some of these guys. So I'll try and watch that game if I can. Thank you for that 888 Huskers. Sorry. 2.5 hours talking is a lot, right? So let's go ahead here. Another pick selected, Alexander Levshin, an OJHL prospect from Ukraine. That's an interesting selection because, yeah, that's fascinating. He's likely obviously to come over. I think he's got a unique game to him. I thought for sure an OHL team would take him, but Prince George took him in the Western Hockey League. He's probably not afraid to go to the Western Hockey League, so that probably won't be an issue in terms of reporting. Yeah, he's played at the junior level already, so that's an interesting pick there. I'm curious to see how that works out. He says, do you cover the phase 1 and phase 2 drafts? Yeah, 88 Huskers. If you go on my channel, I just did I did cover some of my favorite picks during the phase 2 draft. I wasn't able to go live during the phase 2 draft. The phase 1 draft, I think I do have a full live stream on it, actually. If you wanted to watch that and kind of skip through to the parts where your team picked. I did a recap stream of the WHL draft. And then I did a lottery live stream and then also did the phase 1 draft at the same time. So both of those were from a month ago. If you want to tune in and watch those, feel free to do so. And I talk a lot about a lot of the picks that were had in that draft. So it's on my channel. You can find it there. And then, by the way, I subbed. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Appreciate you much. Let's keep going here. And we got 261 subscribers. Look at that. Thank you guys so much. Epic here, man. Anybody can translate that for me, that'd be greatly appreciated because I'd love to answer it. Let's go ahead here and we'll go back to the picks now. Giannis Lutz. Never heard of that guy. Actually, that's the first guy I haven't at least heard the name before. So I'll have to look him up. Good stuff by Peterborough. Raphael Ackerman, Rimouski takes him, another Swiss kid. I like that kid. I think he's a really good player. I wasn't thinking he would be selected this year, but it's a good savvy pick to hold his rights. I think he will really be a very impact player in the Swiss, in terms of finding his game in the CHL level. I'm very curious to see how he adjusts. I think the Swiss League kids are a real wild card. They tend to either do really well, like a Nico Hischier or a Timo Meyer or Nick Ehlers, or they tend to struggle like Florian Schenk did this year and ended up going back. There's a real hit and miss quality of the Swiss kids. But I think this kid's going to hit. I really do. I think he's an interesting player. There's a clear bet on upside there, and I think Rimouski was super savvy to look in selecting him. Thomas Malinik. I don't have a book on him, unfortunately. I apologize. I don't know much about him, but Lethbridge takes him here. Jacob Sturm. Jacob Sturm goes, I don't know if you watch them, but I can recommend following Wojtek Bulat and Adam Hlavacek. Hlavacek's a 2010 born, I think, right? I've heard the name. Yeah, okay. I'm looking him up on Elite Prospects as I'm thinking of this. Okay, I've heard of this kid's. I've paid attention to this kid statistically. Have not watched him, but I like him. I think he's definitely worth following, no question. I think it's hard to say what his upside is right now because he's 14, but a very good player, no questions asked. And then Wojtek Bulat, I think I've heard that name too, but I don't know. I haven't watched him or anything. 08 born. Okay, Mount Field. All right. I'm assuming that's a team you're fans of, right? Is Mount Field, Jakob? I would assume. Okay, I've heard of this kid too, but all right, cool. I'll keep this guy in mind for sure, no question. He's eligible next year, so I'll pay attention to him. Thank you for those names. Really appreciate that. Yeah, really appreciate that. Thank you so much. And I'll watch for those names. Vadim Kasimov, number 8. Let me look him up real quick. I think I don't actually know who that is. I apologize, Epic. I don't have much background on him, so I apologize. So what will Levshin choose next year? NCAA or Prince George, and what would you recommend? What do you think of his skills? Levshin probably is better suited for juniors right now. I think NCAA will come after the fact. He can extend it as far as he wants. So I think for Levshin, he'll probably go to college in his probably his 20-year-old year or 21-year-old year. That's usually when most freshmen get in, and I think that's when he'll probably be best ready for the NCAA. So I think Prince George is a natural landing spot for him. As far as his skills go, he played the OJHL level this year. In terms of what I think of him, I think he's got some clear ability. Pretty shocking that he wasn't able to catch on somewhere a little bit higher than the OJHL. Not there's anything wrong with the OJHL. It's just wonder how that route happened. I think he's worth following for sure. He's definitely going to be a guy who is, future with the Ukrainian national team. And I think he's likely to be a guy who plays for the under-20s this year for Ukraine, and probably will likely be either the backup or the starter. So yeah, that's what I think. I don't have a ton in terms of like special attributes of his necessarily that I've noticed. But I think he's a good goalie. And I think he'll do well in juniors. So thanks for that. And then Marek Dumkar. Okay, noted. I will keep a note on him too. 2010. Okay. Good stuff. All right. I will keep those on. Oh, he's a late born too. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, for sure. Really appreciate those, man. I love learning new names. So thank you for that, Jacob. Appreciate you, man. Let's see what else we got going here. A few more picks here. We got Beksultan Makish. I talked about him earlier. Windsor takes him. That's a really savvy pick there. Makish is a kid who I have a ton of time for. Kazakhstani-born kid, really skilled player. Had him on my watch list this year. Every time I watch this kid, he's been very impressive. Clear NHL upside, no question. A little bit short at 5'10" and 150 pounds, but uber skilled. Very smart player, scores in bunches. Ton of time for him. Definitely will be a 2026 draft eligible to watch, and I think you're going to find him probably to be a second or third round pick. I think he's got that kind of game. Vitaly Koroluk. That must be Alex Koroluk's kid, I would assume, being that he's from Mountain View, California. So Koroluk played for the San Jose Sharks in the early 2000s. I would assume this is his kid. Great. I don't know much on Koroluk to know, but I really liked Alex when I was watching him as a young kid. So, yeah, I think it's an interesting guy to look at, and I think I'm sure he's got some good upside despite being only 5'8" and 160 pounds. František Nedesul played at the NA level this year. Not a bad pick here for Victoria. You're getting good value here at this point. It should be fun to see what kind of player comes out there. And, I think that's a good pick there by Victoria. Cool. So, all right. Caught up with all the comments and, caught up with the picks so far. Some of the guys, I think I have, how many off my watch list right now? I got 3, 5, 8 now. Yeah, I got about 20 left on my list right now, I think. Yeah, 20, 25 left on my list. I'm sure some of these guys might go undrafted, but, the Latvians, man, I think there's still more Latvians that should be selected. I'm surprised there isn't more. Slovaks, too. I think there's some more Slovaks still to be selected. A couple of Norwegians that I think should be selected, and even a couple of French guys that I think should be selected as well. Just a matter of, where they go and, those type of whether or not they want to come over here. A couple more Kazakhstanis, a couple more Danes, I think could be selected. I'll get maybe into those afterwards. I'll talk a little bit about, my thoughts on these guys and where I think they'll go. I look at I think there's a lot more really good draft eligibles that are still available within this. And then I'll talk a little bit more at the end as well about some 09s to watch out for in next year's draft. A couple of them have already really proven themselves prospect wise and are going on to play pro. So lots to like there and a lot of intrigue as well. Up to 96 people. This is awesome, guys. Really appreciate you guys being on here. And, I think we peaked at like 123. So, keep going and, let's see what happens here. All right. Jakob says, do you have Valdis Dahmers on your list? I do not. Just because I if I were to name everybody I would know, I would probably be over exhausted. He's an 05 born? Okay. Well, all right. I didn't know this. Okay. I think I've just vaguely seen this kid. So Valdis is he's an 05 born. So anybody above, or it's 06 to 08 borns, so he's an 05, so he wouldn't be eligible in this draft. But he'll probably be, looking at the stats, he looks to be an interesting guy. Probably a guy who knows? We'll see. He'll definitely be a European guy for sure. That he'll play in the Euro Leagues, no question. You guys will probably have him in Mount Field for a while. I'm assuming that's the team that you're affiliated with or fans of, but I could see him being a player for you guys for a few years for sure. Gezbos Check goes, who's going to be a favorite for a gold medal at the World Juniors this year? Canada's going to have a real good roster. U.S. going to have a real good roster. The usual suspects probably will do well. If you want my options on who I think will be gold, it's hard to say right now. I really think Canada is probably the favorite in my opinion right now. I would have to really dig deep. I might even do a future video on that if you guys want. Early thoughts on who I think the guys will be selected. So I will I will find out. Let me maybe I'll do a video on it, Gezbos. I'll promise it to you. So that'll be a video I'll do in maybe the next month or so. But overall, if you forced me to give me an answer, it would be Canada right now. Robert Spin goes, where can you watch the draft live? This is it. This is where you would watch it. They don't do coverage of this draft. So I figured this is a spot for me to go ahead and do the coverage and talk about what I know about. And I'm not working for the CHL. I'm not working for anybody there. I'm just following along with the live draft thing that they give. And there's no video feed. So it's just agents being agents and making deals with these teams and me reacting to them as they're happening. So this is the place to be. And if you want to learn more, follow along and subscribe. A lot of people have already done so today. David's Tarvids. I don't have anything on him. I'm gonna look him up though. 08 born, okay. Mestis player, okay. I'll be honest, I don't have much on him. I haven't watched U18 Mestis is hard to follow. I don't really have much on him, unfortunately. I hate to say that. But thanks for keeping that name on my radar. I'm actually I'll watch for him. Maybe next year's draft. He'll probably be a guy that maybe goes next year, but playing in the U18 Mestis, you're not going to get the viewings you probably should. He'll have to play for a U18 Sim Liga team, I think, to really get some viewings. But thanks for the comment, and hopefully you subscribe. Let me go ahead here. I'll get into more. Adam Golger goes to Kingston. This is a great selection. I think this is the best Kingston selection today. I like his game a lot. I think he's super stable and defensively. Played for the Slovak under-18 team throughout the year and has played at the U20 level and probably for the second tier in Slovakia as well. Just a good player. Nothing super amazing about his game, but he's also just super stable and very intriguing to watch. I think he'll be a really good player and somebody to really watch for. So good pick there by Kingston. Maxim Sokolovsky. I don't know much on it, but is he really 6'8"? Wow, this guy's a unicorn. Holy crap. What's it? I don't know if I've never heard of this guy. That's a great name to follow, though, man. Holy crap. Holy born 6'8". 84 points this year. Holy crap. Yeah, I never knew that guy, but that's an interesting pick by London. You're taking a home run swing on somebody like that. Elias Poole for Spokane. German player. One of the more impactful German juniors that were probably eligible for this draft. The only other guys I think that Germany might have selected are the Greve twins. But I think they were already selected, so there probably won't be any more German players selected. Poole was probably the last guy I thought might have a chance to be selected, so not a bad pick there by Spokane. You're going to see a lot of passes coming up now through this. It just means that their import spots are taken, so there won't be selections for those. So this draft will probably end very quickly after those passes. There's probably about 30, 35 picks left. So we'll see this probably come to an end here in the next 45 minutes or so. But I'll be doing a little bit of live stuff after, and I'll talk a little bit more about, my thoughts on things, and we'll see what happens. But lots of Sokolovsky is a really intriguing pick there for London. I'm gonna have to learn more about him. Teodor Vapanik. Don't have much on him, unfortunately. I hate to say that. Alexei Grabnev. I'm going to keep that guy on my radar. I don't have a book on him, but he'll be a guy who I will watch for. Probably a really intriguing player that I should be paying attention to. Playing for SK St. Petersburg isn't a joke, that's for sure. You're definitely a really impactful player if you're playing there. Grabnev, I'm going to keep him. He might have just been added to my draft radar. That's a really intriguing player and somebody who I think I have a lot of time for, no question. Pentington here goes Tristan Jewel Peterson, Danish player who played for Pentington, played for the V's this past year. Big kid. I didn't realize he's 6'4". I've heard of this kid for a couple of years now. Him and Anton Lind were two of the clear 06s out of the Danish class that were really highly touted. So, for Tristan Pearson, he's a really good player, super talented. BCHL level this year was, he competed really well in that. So, and obviously Pentington's very familiar with him, so they felt really comfortable with the selection and good on them for selecting him there. Peterborough takes Melvin Fernstrom, Swedish player from Örebro, already played some pro games. Another high-end player, very impactful player, and should be a 80, 90-point guy in the CHL. Very savvy pick there for their second-round pick in Peterborough. And then Gesbos goes two more, and we've made a Czech history record in the CHL import draft. That's amazing. I'm kind of shocked at how many Czechs were selected. I knew there would be a lot. I don't think I anticipated these many Czechs selected. There's every year there's always Czechs that get selected in the CHL import draft, but I don't think I expected a record number by any means. So it's great. I mean, it's awesome to see. Obviously, the Czech development system is clearly producing guys. I mean, I think it's a more of a case study as to why they're not staying in the Czech Republic, because they used to. But that being said, pretty awesome to see, and obviously clearly the youth levels are still developing guys very well. Ivan's Styvanishin, don't have a book on him, don't know much about him, but Valdor takes him, and got 65 still on here. Wow, you guys are killing it, man. This is awesome to see that there's so many people that are engaged and interested, and please subscribe if you guys really like the content. It's awesome that you guys have followed along, and don't be shy. Please comment, please subscribe, please do what you can, and support the channel. And I'd love to, if you support a nerd like me, that'd be greatly appreciated. Michael Eriksson goes here, or Moose Jaw, Norwegian kid. I have Michael Eriksson as a guy who I thought would be drafted today, so it's good to see that we were able to. He was able to get drafted. I think there's a real intrigue in terms of him coming to North America, especially now that he's drafted by an NHL team. With Michael Eriksson, I think you get a really good player. You get a really skilled player. Very impactful in terms of his offensive abilities. He really brings it out there all the time. I think he has not acclimated the pro level as well as he would have liked, but he'll be clearly a very dominant junior hockey player, and he's done very well at the under 20 level. So he should be an immediate impact player for Moose Jaw at the WHL level, and no surprise there. There should be a lot of really intriguing imports going to the WHL this year, just because of who's been selected in this draft, as well as the guys that have already been selected. There are a lot of good European talent. Should be fun to see and witness. But a really savvy selection. I think it's a perfect system for him to develop in Moose Jaw, and it's clearly a lot of what he probably needs. So Guelph Pass, we're looking at St. John now for the next pick. Get ready, Noah. We'll see what happens here, but we will see what who they select here. There's a few Finns out there, a few Lithuanians out there, a few Swiss guys out there that maybe go next year even. The Danes like Linus, Mats Kleibo could be a guy who could go there. We shall see. Max Wieland. Okay, I don't have a book on either one of the. I don't have a book on Shams or Wieland. Don't know much about them, unfortunately. I apologize. We'll see what happens. I don't know. I don't have much on them, unfortunately. So Coloma goes here. They're next. Like I said, this is going to go really quick. So a lot of guys are going to be drafted, and we're going to be moving on to some other things. So we'll see how it goes. But there's some really intrigue for sure on some of these guys that are eligible. Let's see, 71 strong. These guys are awesome. František Pelotin, goalie for the Lahti Pelicans. His brother, I think, was selected by them, right? Yeah, so you get both brothers. Wow, nice. Okay. Well, the Pelotin brothers are going to Kelowna. That'll be good for them. Have each other to develop with, and he's a good goalie in his own right. Both of the Pelotin brothers are guys who, I have a lot of time for. They're very skilled players. Kelowna did a great job in this draft. Honestly, they got a lot of really good, savvy selections, and be able to have both brothers, that's terrific. That means they're probably not picking in the next couple of years. But they took advantage of their number one overall pick, and now they got him and his brother now going to Kelowna, and it should be a great opportunity for them to develop it. Good for them. Owen Sound now going to be selecting. We'll see who they take here. There's I can already tell you there's going to be some guys that aren't selected out of my group. Albert Schmitz, he's a Latvian. I didn't have him on my list, but he's a Latvian defenseman. Good player, good skating. Didn't really think he was going to come to North America, so I'm kind of shocked by that. So good on him. It could be a real savvy selection. Drew goes here. Who are the Danish prospects? So two of them have already been selected. In Anton Lind and Tristan Peterson. But if you're talking about the guys on my list, Drew, I have Linus Roth, who's an 07 born, and the other guy I have is Mats Klingbeck-Kleibo. Both guys who are 07 borns, who Kleibo actually got drafted last week. Both guys who I think could be candidates to come to the CHL. But those are the two I have on my list. So we will see. We will see, but those are two guys who are on my list who I still have as guys who could be drafted, no question. Luca Napio, short defense with 5'9", 152. Don't have much on him, unfortunately. And then Kuzma Voronin, another Russian kid who came over. Moncton, that's a savvy selection by Moncton. Really like that pick for them. Played for the Fargo Force this year. Very skilled player, very high-end offensive guy, really good skating, great edge work, just like a typical Russian would. And yeah, lot to like there. I think he's a really intriguing guy, really good prospect. And I think for Fargo this year he had like 35 points in 40 games, something weird like that. Let me look real quick. Oh, over the course of the season, okay. So over the course of the season, he had 28 points in 49 games for Youngstown and Fargo. Originally was committed to go to University of Maine this past year or this next year, but it looks like that might be 26, 27 before he goes there. So clearly he's going to take a year and probably play in the Western League and, or in the QMJHL and find his group. Tobias Zevolinski now selected as well for the Sioux. I don't think I had much on Zevolinski. I have to look him up just to refresh myself. Tobias, he's no 8 born, late born kid. Or sorry, not late born, but he's a 2026 draft eligible. Seems intriguing. 6'3", 207. Big kid. Sioux, great development system. That's a lot to like there. Mateo Spaeth goes. He's a German-Spanish dual nat. I didn't think he'd be selected, but Niagara clearly likes him. I like him too. I just didn't know that he was going to be a CHL guy. Good player, like his effort. Again, I wasn't expecting him to be selected, but I don't mind the selection at all for Niagara. I think it makes a lot of sense. Great shot from what I understand. Probably one of the better shots in this draft, actually. He was a very high-end shooter of the puck. Skating needs a little work. He's not the fastest guy in the world out there, but he is very good with his stick skills. They'll probably work him with a skating coach, but that's not a guy I would have been thinking that would have been selected, but good on him. And then Reina Salzines, I had him as a guy on my list. He was one of the few defensemen I had on my list that I thought would go. Good selection there. He's gained a lot of weight. I think last I saw him, he was a 180. They got him listed there at 200 pounds. So he's clearly, rounded out his game a little bit. Reynes he's a skilled defenseman. He's had a really good offensive output actually over the last few years. So, good player at the U18 level. Sherbrooke is going to really like that pick. I think they're going to want him, and he'll be a guy who, like I said the Latvians are going to be coming off the board, and they have been so far. And we'll see what other guys come out. I think we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 8. Got 10 picks remaining in this draft, and then I'll go through the guys that I think should have been drafted as well. There's probably about 10 or 11 guys who I thought could have been drafted, at least right now on my list. Some other guys I had some personal favorites, so I wasn't surprised that they weren't selected, but we shall see. Juraj Rosa, Saginaw, nice pick there. Really like that kid. Was super high on him early on. He had a really unbelievable 14 and 15-year-old year, and then struggled a little bit to adjust to higher levels. But that's a great selection. Big frame kid, good skater, scores in bunches. Saginaw, again, just continue to mine that Czech Russian pipeline that they go through all the time, and lots to like there. I think is a really very impactful player, very skilled player, and good on them. I think that's an excellent selection. And then Filip Vilk, another Czech kid. So the Czechs, man, continuing. I think they hit the record. Guys, pause. Let me know if they hit the record. I think they did. Lots to like there. Very skilled player as well. I don't have much other than I know he's pretty skilled. And so Kirill Zadorov. Where's Kirill Zadorov? Hasn't been selected. So there's going to be some guys that aren't selected. And, for reasons that I'm not sure, it's just, if this would have been 5 or 6 or 7 picks, 7 rounds. Some of these guys would have been selected. He's a short guy. He doesn't really have the pedigree of a guy who I thought would be selected. So, I don't think he will be selected. He'll probably, honestly, right now, current level for him probably looks like a guy who should be playing in AAA hockey in North America. Should he come over? Timur Tangaterov. Let's see. Another kid, Oscar Ufa, U18. Another short kid. Another kid. He needs to come up to the top level of the U18s for Russia, I think, in order to get really selected. Both those guys are just in weird spots, right? Like they're just, probably early for them to both be picked. They might be candidates next year. But thank you for the questions there. I really appreciate it. Drew says, what about Anton Lind? Anton Lind went. He was selected. I'll go back in a minute. Anton Lind, he went earlier, but where did he go? Let's see him. Chicoutimi took him at 42. So he was a first round guy. I think it's a real opportunity for him. And, he's a guy who's clearly struggled in Sweden, struggled at the Danish pro level. I think the natural step for him was to find his opportunity. And, we'll see what happens with him there. But, I think Anton, this is his last shot to really prove himself developmentally. I think he's been in a few different systems. He's traveled across the world to get himself ready to go. He's just got to find his game eventually. Vadim Smirnov, another really talented player as well, 08 born. Oshawa takes some very good selection there. I really like that player, very talented player. Clearly a cut above a lot of the 08s in Russia. I think he's one of the more impactful guys. Shocked he got him in the 3rd round. Gezpa says, yeah, we did it. Awesome. Good to see. I'm glad for the Czechs, man. It's awesome to see that they got a record in the import draft this year, and it's good to see that they're able to do what they're able to do. Mikey Bergman. Mikey Bergman was not selected, Drew, so far. He might not be. I think he's worth selecting. I just don't know that he will be. He might be a guy. I think Bergman's in 07, if I remember correctly. Let me look real quick. Yeah, he's 07. So he could be a candidate next year. I think he'll be a guy who, if he's not selected today, he's definitely eligible next year. Might see himself selected. Anton Valle. Is that a guy? Anton Valle? Look. I haven't heard of him before. Yeah, I don't have him here. I don't know much about him, unfortunately, man. I apologize. Let's see here. We're going through. Obviously, Prince Albert's must have a selection they're not aware of or something. I'm not sure, but yeah. Only how many more picks we got left here? We got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 7 more picks remaining in this draft here, and then we'll get a little more into some other guys that are eligible as well. Where's Matvey Sherbakov? Matvey Sherbakov. I don't have him either. Asha Ufa as well. Same thing, man. Asha Ufa, he's a short guy. You guys are all 3 guys you've mentioned have all been under 5'10". That's wild. He doesn't look like he'll ever be drafted. Unfortunately, I hate to say that, but he's got 1 point in the last 2 years. Don't know that he'll ever be selected. I hate to say that, but that's just the nature of it. And he's playing in the Tier 2 Russian under 18 level. There's not a real shot there for him, unfortunately. We go ahead here, and 261 and 261 subscribers. You guys are awesome. Really appreciate you guys that have subscribed. If you haven't already, please do so. If you really enjoy the content, like me talking hockey, like I said, I'll talk about any level. So you guys let me know what you want to talk about, and I'll talk about it with you. That's just, the nature of this channel, really. Following stuff that isn't really followed, and you guys are commenting and coming in clutch. So you guys have been terrific today. Really appreciate everybody who's been following along and staying on. if you're watching, I'm recording. Really appreciate you as well. You guys are helping me to boost this channel and get to a point where, I love talking hockey, and it's great to be able to talk with you guys and learn more here. So we got Matthias Mon. I don't have much on, but I was wondering if this would happen. Alex Karmanov goes, the Moldovan-born 7 foot, 274-pound defenseman. Yes, you heard me correctly. Brantford goes, and they take the late round swing on him. Really awesome pick here. He's committed to Penn State in a few years. I don't know if he's OHL ready next year. I think that's a lot to ask of a kid who just came to North America last year, but he was super dominant at the U16 level. And I think he can play in the OHL. I think he's a very capable player. 7 foot, 274. Like I said, he would be bigger. I mean, for context, he's 3 inches bigger than Chara and 20 pounds more than Chara for context. And he's only 17. That's the crazy part. He's an 08 born. Kind of unbelievable that he was selected today. It's a major milestone for him. I think the Bar Down crew and Cora and McCallum, I think, did a video on YouTube. You can look them up. As well as Face Off of Fahrenholtz has also done a video on him as well. Those are 2 great links to learn more about this kid. He's a wonderful kid, very, very good character. Also an excellent skater for me, 7 foot tall. Doesn't look gumpy out there. Very athletic, actually. Great shot. He's just a physical force. He'll always be a physical force because he's so big. The awesome pick there by Brantford. I was wondering if that was going to happen today, and it did. So good on them. Mikolas Gadaskis goes now. Another Lithuanian-born. They got 2 Lithuanian-born kids are selected. Played in Sweden at the under 18 level. Really skilled player. Lethbridge is going to love this kid. Very talented player. Very high-end skill. Dominated the 2A U18s and 2A U20s. He was super, super impressive at those levels. Clearly one of the best players on the ice at those levels. I think he'll come over to the CHL, and if he doesn't, I'd be shocked. Super impactful player. This is a pick. Both Karmanov and Skadauskas, they're both, if not this year, they're definitely next year picks. So it should be interesting to see what comes out of those 2 players, but both very high upside players, and I have a lot of time for both of them. All right, let's see what we got here. Windsor. So we got 4 picks remaining, 3 OHL teams and a Western Hockey League team. Your QMJHL teams are done selecting. And we will see what other guys are selected today. Let's see. All right. Let's see. We're just waiting on some more picks here. Like I said, Mikolas Skadauskas, another Lithuanian. We got 2 Lithuanians selected. I believe that is a record. So really appreciate you guys on here. Kirill Zadorov and Timur Tonkarov are promising guys. I advise you to take a closer look at them. We'll do, man. We'll do. I'll watch them, and I'll let you know if I obviously I can't today, but thanks for keeping them on my radar. Really appreciate it. And I'll watch them. I think the one guy plays for Ufa, and the other guy, I forgot what team he played for. I looked them up, but I'll note them both. Appreciate you. And Jens, always following the content. Always appreciate him being on here. He says, I'm late. I will start from the beginning. Sounds good, brother. Leave any comments when you can. Really appreciate you being on here, and thanks for the support as always, man. One of the early subscribers. So let's go ahead here. We got Lone Burkhalter went now. I believe his brother Mika was also selected a few years ago. Intriguing player, good selection by Windsor. Heikki Rowan Heikki Ruohonen is selected as well. For Kitchener, a really good player for the Dubuque Fighting Saints, Philadelphia Flyers draft pick. Just an intriguing ass player, really skilled, very talented player. Kitchener is going to really like that kid, and he's a great selection nonetheless. I think he's an excellent, excellent player. London here. All right, let's see here. AO says, "Who is Roman? Where's Roman Lamont? Who's that? Oh, Belarusian kid. Okay. Oh wait, born, not selected, but thanks for the name. Appreciate that. I'll keep it on my radar for sure. I don't know much on him, but thanks for informing me on who he is. And hey, if you like the channel, please subscribe. Cool. All right, we got Marcus Nordmark here for London. Nordmark's an excellent hockey player. He's top 20 player in 27. I think 26. Really high end. If London can get him, you're loving that pick for London. I was wondering what they were going to do there. I'm surprised they didn't take him with their second, because that kid they got in the second round he could have been had in the third, no question. But Marcus Nordmark, hell of a pick there. Really nice swing by London. That's the London style pick I was expecting. And then finally, the last pick today, Maxim Diachin, playing for Chelyabinsk in the U18 level. Calgary selects him there. So yeah, that's the last pick today. Yeah, so thanks so much. I'm going to stay on for probably another 20 minutes or so, and then I will probably head off after that, maybe a little bit longer, depending on how many you guys comment. I'm going to cap it at 4 hours, though, because it's a lot of talking. And if you guys have any comments, feel free to leave them on the bottom. I will answer them when I have the opportunity. But a man's got to eat, so I'll cap it at 4 hours, but I'll stay on for the next half hour and change. Jens Olsen goes, why do some teams pass? Does it cost them to draft somebody? So Jens, I talked about this earlier, but you were on stream, so that's okay. They have only a certain amount of import spots. So junior teams only have 3 import spots for their roster. If they have more than 3, they have to give up one. So they tend to only draft. That's why there's only 3 rounds in this draft, so that way they can maximize whatever they need to. They can it used to be only I think it used to only be 2 rounds this draft, and now it's moved to 3 this year. So yeah, they're only allowed 3 guys on their roster at a time. So that's why some teams pass, just because they're either maxed out or they don't want to pick. So thanks for that question. AO, you're welcome. And then Kirill Zadorov and Timur Tengrov are 08s. Noted. I will keep them in mind. They're eligible next year too, so they could likely be selected next year, especially if they move up levels. They definitely could be guys who could get selected. And I know UFA is a really good team as well, so I wouldn't be surprised to see UFA eventually move up to the main level of the Russian U18 level. So again, for those that have been on here the whole time, thank you guys so much. If you're leaving now, do yourself a favor, please subscribe. Please comment. You're watching a recording, make sure you're commenting and letting me know about everything that went on today and how much you appreciate the content. So if you're logging off, let me know that, and I'll respond with thank yous and stuff like that. So we'll recap here real quick. For those who missed the beginning part of this, so you got Thomas Politin went 1, Benach 2, Shilov 3, Prado 4. Latvians went off the board a lot today. A lot of Czechs as well, a lot of Slovaks, a lot of Russians, a couple Lithuanians, a few Germans, 1 Hungarian, a couple Belarusians. You got some other guys here, a couple Swedes, a couple Danes. There's a lot of intrigue this year. A couple Austrians as well. I'm not going to go. You guys can watch the rest of my stream in terms of pick by pick stuff. I'm going to talk about the teams I thought really won today. As far as other teams go, I'm not going to do like a blow by blow, but I really liked Cologne's picks. I like Brantford a lot too. Victoriaville went clearly on the Russians. All three of those teams I thought did really well. Windsor did a good job selecting today. St. John's had a few interesting picks. Just a lot of really good, intriguing guys that were available today, and I was very impressed with the quality of players that were selected today. I think there's a ton of guys that still weren't selected that I'm going to get into in a few minutes that I think could be really impactful players here at the at the CHL level. So you can catch this all on CHL. You can go either on Elite Prospects Draft Center and see all the picks there now, or you could go on chl.ca/import to see all the results and view it yourself. So I'm going to go ahead and log this off here. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen real quick. I'm going to add the different guys who I still thought could have been eligible as well. So Melikov is a guy I think is eligible next year. I could see Mikhail Melikov being a selection with a really good MHL season. I think he's definitely a guy for 26, so we will keep that on the radar. Nikita Kleopov, I don't think he was selected. Let me double check real quick. And I think he might be. I'm kind of shocked he wasn't selected. He was selected. So he was picked 35. I just forgot to mark him. So he was taken. Morozov wasn't taken, which was kind of a shock. I don't know if Morozov is going to be a guy who likely let me check here on Ilya. Yeah, Morozov wasn't taken. That was kind of shocking. But hey, you know what? The USHL benefits from that, right? I think he will be a guy who likely will be a really good candidate next year to be selected. He's got plenty of time. This was his first year of eligibility. So those two were all selected, and that's good to see that there. I'm updating my list as I go here, guys, so bear with. Just want to double check Belhorsky. Yeah, Belhorsky was added on here. Victor Samal is a guy who I think should get some looks next year. Kind of shocked he wasn't selected. The three guys here, the Slovaks, Timothy Kazda should be probably a really high-end pick next year. I'm very shocked he wasn't selected either. He plays for the USHL at the Chicago Steel. He would be a guy I think it should be a day one selection. I'm shocked. I think he was so late in acknowledging that he wanted to be in the CHL that I think next year is going to be the year for him to be selected. Then we go on to Michael Kunderlich. I think he'll probably come over eventually. David Balash will be a guy who comes over eventually. Arvid Drat and Novotny, I was shocked to not see selected. Hermstrom, I think, might have already been selected, actually. So I'll double check that. Konstantin Hutzinger is a guy I think could be selected next year. Tintuzen, Bruno Osmanis, Sirkin, Selekis, Leha, Merniks, Rutkis. Ludwig Lofton is now not eligible to be selected anymore, so he just didn't come to the CHL for some reason. Itu, Orpana, and Vanainen are guys that should have been selected. The French have a lot of guys that I thought could have been selected today. Alexander Marnouk, Noah Maccabees, Esteban Voiturier, and Noah Sansa Kitala, who's a French-Belgian dual net. And then, a few others that I thought might have been selected as well. Simas Ignatavicius, I thought would have been selected today. Maxim Burkhoff. Timofeyev now can't be selected. It was his last year. Yegor Kim, Narulin Baikin, Mads Clevo, Elias Roth. Bruno Isdan can't be selected anymore. I think Robert Plamish and Philip Winkler are guys that could have been selected. So I'll add those to my list next year. I'll probably do probably an early watch list for the CHL import draft for 26. I'll probably do a video on that in the coming months, just with some names and different people to watch out for. So that'll be an interesting time to see where other guys are available. But overall, I thought it was a really good draft for a lot of teams this year. They got a lot of really good imports. Quality is still there. Probably even have a couple more rounds if they really wanted to. But obviously, you don't want to have every team have 7, 8, 9 Europeans, because then the Canadians are then concerned about their main development path being taken over by the Europeans, which is funny because the opposite isn't really a concern. So makes you wonder a little bit. Jen says here, Harmstrong got drafted by the NHL. Does that not make him eligible for the CHL? No, he can be drafted by the CHL as well, Jens. It's just a matter of if anybody has his rights. I'm actually going to look up right now if maybe somebody took him last year and I forgot. That's possible, for sure. Let me see offhand. No, he doesn't have any. Nobody in the CHL has his rights, which is interesting. He was taken by the Blues last week. I thought for sure he'd be a guy that would have been poached by a CHL team. So he might be a really good candidate next year should he struggle at the pro level. But he's going to have some time in Allsvenskan. Should be interesting to see what he's able to do, in Sweden next year. But yeah, he is eligible. He just, I guess, wasn't selected. All right, guys. I'm going to give last call for any questions. I'll give it a couple minutes here, but just one more shill for the podcast itself. Really appreciate everybody that was on today. It was awesome to have that many people on here. Probably going to get a lot of views on this thing even after the fact, just because of everybody looking for CHL import draft results. So really appreciate everybody that came on here today and really engaged in the content. You guys were terrific. Got a lot of names that even I got to watch out for in the coming years. So I will watch for those names and give you guys my input should it ever be brought up again. And, like I said, if you guys liked it, please subscribe to the channel. Please engage in the content. You guys were, again, it was awesome to have the chat as active as it was today. It was cool to see that there were so many people intrigued and interested in the content today. And it's good to know that there are people interested in the niches of hockey and the niches of all these countries and where these non-traditional players come from. This is their big moment. So it's for them to be drafted in North America is a very impactful and big deal. And it's awesome to see that this is going into more people every day. So we got here another comment here. Daniil Ramazanov is a good attacking defender. How is he not in the draft? I don't understand. Daniil Ramazanov. I think he was a pretty decent level player, actually. I remember that name. Daniil Ramazanov, sorry. I know I've seen that name. I don't know why I'm not being able to pull it up right now, but I think he's, sometimes there's shocking picks like this, man. It just happens, like I said, I got about 25 names out of my 60 that still aren't drafted. So it's just the nature of it all. Eventually, I don't know if he's interested in even coming to North America. Sometimes it's just a matter of they don't have the representation or the agency that's willing to make them feel like they're able to do more, or they're able to be represented correctly. So it's just a matter of advisors sometimes. And, they'll find themselves eventually. So, thanks for that. And, as far as other things go, as far as guys for next year, I'm going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some guys that are eligible that are 09s for first year guys. 09s that are eligible for next year. Max Pankin, he plays in the DEL this year. He's going to be a 16-year-old playing German pro hockey. And, it should be interesting to see what, kind of player he'll develop into. I think he'll be a very, very good DEL player. And he may find himself too good for the CHL. That's how good this kid is. He's a very impressive player, one of the best German players we've seen since Stützle and Seider. Joa Neuenschwander is another 09 that's a really impressive player. Played at the World Juniors this past year, was the youngest player at the World Juniors this past year. Very impressive player. His brother was just selected by Vancouver in the NHL draft this past week as a goalie. Clearly training on his brother has been a very impactful opportunity for him to be able to really measure himself. And he's playing at the under 20 level in the Swiss League this past year. So it's really intriguing to see that he's been able to do what he's been able to do. Victor Meneghetti, an Italian kid. He's playing in the Swedish leagues this year. He's a very interesting player playing for SDE, I believe. A lot to like with him. Hugo Arps, an Australian-born player. I think he'll be a guy next year that could get selected. Playing in the Finnish league. Timur's Malisevs playing in the Swedish leagues as well, I believe, for Timra. Mako Izdan, his brother wasn't selected today. He might be selected. We'll see what happens there. Luca Fischer and Paul Schinchenegg, both guys who played for the the Austrian national team. Schinchenegg in particular played for the under 20 level at the 1A level. Was the youngest player at that tournament. Spanish kid Andre Garkushka, Garkushka. Lot to like with him. Another really skilled defenseman. Has to move up in a level, though. I think he's clearly too good for the Spanish Junior League. Finn Gregory, another kid who's playing in the Netherlands Junior League, is an intriguing player. And then finally, Kilian Alves Pereira. He's a guy who is another guy to look at for next year. Really impactful player, already playing at the under 20 level. Him, Pankin, Neuenschwander, Malisevs. Those are the clear best four right now, in my opinion. I think those are the guys to watch for next year as far as the 09s that are going to be introduced into this class. So it's great to see that they were able to do what they were able to do. And, I think they're going to be really intriguing guys to watch throughout the year and into next year. So that being said, I got some other questions here that are off to the side. Jens Olsen goes, what do you think of the USPHL Premier League? My son was contacted by the Ventura Vikings, but we turned them down. We thought the league was just not good. They tend to have a pipeline for some reason with Swedes. I don't know a ton about like their organization, like in terms of like their validity. The USHL Premier League is a newer league, so it's not necessarily the most amazing league to play in. I would say that if your son has any sort of real aspirations to play North American juniors, I think you got to be a little higher than USHL Premier. It's not a bad league by any means. If he's somebody who's, flirting with the edges of playing in, the top level of Swedish juniors, I think he's better than that. That's just my opinion. I would say look out for like a North American Hockey League offer. Look out for even like an Eastern Hockey League offer, a NCBC offer. One of those leagues I think would be a lot more suited for him if you're talking US. And then I think I would say for if you go to Canada and you're looking for a similar level, you're probably going to want to go to like the OJHL, the CCHL, even the BCHL, the AJHL, if he's good enough to play in those leagues. I think those are really savvy leagues. And then really it just depends on the organization. But with Ventura, I think they're a newer organization. I don't have a ton of pedigree with them in terms of what any thoughts on them. They weren't really, it looks like this year was their first year, so they're kind of new to the game. I don't know if it's worth the risk just for your son. It's just my honest opinion. If he wants me to use advisor, I'm more than welcome to do that. As you know, Jens, you know how I am. So I appreciate you commenting on there. And then where is Lev Vinogradski? Let me see who that is. I've never heard of him. Another guy, Astra U8, UFA. He's got a nice stat line. Wow. Interesting player. He needs to just move up, man. Astra UFA, they need to move up as a team if these kids are really that talented. Okay. We got 16 on here. This is awesome. If you guys still want to talk, we can. Like I said, I'm going to cap it at about 4 hours. The draft is over for those that are just tuning in. So if you want to follow along with the results, it's on Elite Prospects. So you go to their draft center, and then under drafts, there's an all drafts. Hit that, and it'll link you right to, you know what? I'll just link everybody this so they can have it in the chat. That's probably a better way to do it instead of telling you how to get there. Yeah, it's already updated, so I will go ahead and share this in the chat for those that are interested. And, those are the links for those. If you want full draft results, that's your spot. Yeah. So any other questions? Again, last call on questions. Just want to make sure everybody's able to get their questions answered and be able to talk to me about, what they're what's going on here. So would really appreciate those that are on here to leave their questions. Otherwise, if I don't have any in a couple minutes, I will I'll probably log off. So yeah, so and then just some stuff coming up in the future. I'm just going to do a couple more things on some future drafts and stuff, but I'm gonna I'm just gonna go ahead and log off. Any comments, leave them on the recording below. Thanks to everybody who subscribed. Thanks for everybody who's leaving comments, chats, everything like that. Really appreciate you guys. But I've had my cue. I'm done. I think I've hit my max, and really appreciate you guys. Leave your comments below after the end of the stream or on the live chat replay, and I will look at them later. Thanks. Have a good one. Bye.